Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1390 of the War News stream. And we have more big news yet again tonight. We have seen that Syria is devolving into absolute chaos amid a major new terrorist attack in their country. Excuse me, by the way, goodness. I was trying to hold that back, folks, but I was choking. I'm telling you what, I'm choking out the gate. But also, we saw Moscow was rocked by a massive Ukrainian attack as well. And also, Germany is preparing military defenses near Russia. And we have very big news. It's good to see you all once again.
And of course, folks, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, Christmas Carol style, as we now are afflicted with illness like Tiny Tim. Oh, heavens! But nevertheless, over the past 24 hours, we have been able to hear of absolutely massive news from around the world, and we have been able to hear that over the course of the day, it does appear that unfortunately, the Syrian interim government is falling into a state of anarchy, at least within the central areas of the country, spreading from the city of Idlib all the way to Palmyra, as an ISIS attack has now been conducted today that has claimed the lives of 5 Syrian interim government security forces inside of the city of Marat al-Numan, which is directly along the major motorway, the M5, heading all the way from Aleppo to Damascus, which is actually the very same highway that was the road to fame that took the HTS straight from Idlib and right down to Damascus to overthrow the Assad-led regime just earlier last year, around exactly a year ago. Meanwhile, we've also heard of significant attacks of terror within the area of the Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, and at the same time, there has been some form of a shooting that has occurred at Brown University, and while there are allegations that the Brown University shooting may have been a potential terrorist attack, the flag of the Islamic State has been found within the car of one of the shooters at the Bondi Beach, largely meaning that these attacks being conducted at the moment inside of Syria and around the world may be a part of a broader ISIS campaign. Meanwhile, the United States of America has pledged through the U.S. government and the Office of the President that retaliatory strikes are going to be conducted effective immediately to the greatest deal and level of aggressiveness that the United States Central Command can muster at the moment against the ISIS forces that are now rearing their head inside of central Syria and attempting to apparently reassert their control in the region after they lost all of their land holdings in the latter part of 2018, nearly 7 years ago. Additionally, we have also heard of significant news in terms of drone and missile attacks, primarily missile attacks that the state of Ukraine has conducted directly against the city of Moscow. Overnight, the Russian air defenses appear to have been working overtime, feverishly, in an attempt to take down the incoming Ukrainian drones and missiles that were entering the area of the city of Moscow. While a decent amount of these drones and missiles were shot down, some of them did manage to make it through the Moscow air defense perimeter, causing significant damage within the area of the city. We have also heard that the Russian Federation's government has reiterated today that they are more than happy to talk to the United States and Ukraine and Europe and everyone else and your neighbor's dog about a possible peace in Ukraine, but they are not willing to listen and talk to anyone about the peace in Ukraine. It's just that you have to accept their demands without talking, or they're going to keep the war going. Pretty much meaning the war is going to keep going. We also heard that Zelensky has met with U.S. delegates today inside of Berlin, including the famed Witkoff, to be able to talk about a possible peace with the Russians, which clearly will never happen under the sun, but we're still going to be talking about it. Meanwhile, we have also heard other major developments, speaking of which, within the Thai-Cambodian situation, as it has now been about 72 hours now since the President of the United States stated that a ceasefire was going to be going into effect in the evening inside of Thailand and Cambodia, and there is still no clear sign of any sort of a ceasefire that was ever even attempted. Both sides are going absolutely ham once again today, with significant battles and firefights happening along the entirety of the border. Thai Marines have actually ended up taking ground inside of Cambodia, inside of the Trot province, within the very southern regions of the Thai border before it makes it to the Gulf of Thailand. Simultaneously, Cambodian forces have been conducting significant firefights and battles with the Thai army along the area of the Buriram, Surin, and Sisaket regions within the north. The Thai Air Force appears to also be controlling the skies, once again, absolutely, as the Cambodians have practically no real air defense or air force, and the Thai Air Force is continuing to strike strategic targets well behind the lines, knocking out command posts, and not only that, a significant supply and logistics facility of the Cambodian army along the major number 6 highway from Krong Siem Rip to Krong Poi Pet. From what we understand, the Thai are generally in control of the situation on the ground right now, and it does appear that this war is going to be going on for a quite long period of time, as the Prime Minister of the state of Thailand has made it clear through multiple statements in prior days that they will not be looking to end this conflict until they deem that Cambodia will no longer pose a threat to the Kingdom of Thailand or its sovereignty or the safety of its citizens near to the border areas. Meanwhile, the Islamic Republic of Iran is apparently considering the replacement of some top leaders of Hamas and Hezbollah, as they are believing that they're not apparently getting the right results. We've actually heard that they're going to be bringing together the terrorist board of directors to confide with the terrorist shareholders to see if they would like to oust the CEOs of their terrorist organizations. Didn't really know that this was going to enter corporate lawfare here, but here we are. Apparently, terrorists operate a lot like corporations. We also were able to hear that there appears to be significant buildups, according to satellite photography and data, of Iranian missile production facilities at the city of Shrahud, which is showing that they're attempting to build up their missile stocks for some sort of a future action, possibly against the state of Israel or against their adversaries within the region. Additionally, the Russian vessel, the Virat, has now actually been flagged as a Russian vessel. While in prior days it was flagged, I believe, as a Guyana tanker, today they have actually changed the name of the ship and are now flying the Russian flag off of the Virat, clearly showing that the ship was operating under a flag of convenience and completely removing any ambiguity about whether or not the ship was working for Russia, as it is now actually flying the flag of the Russian Federation, and it now sports a Russian name to the ship. It is no longer even the Virat. We have also seen that additionally the Ukrainian armed forces have conducted significant attacks against other critical Russian infrastructure and cities throughout the entirety of Western Russia overnight. We've also seen that the United States of America is continuing its military buildups with no end in sight inside the Eastern Caribbean as we watch the endless buildup on the hunt for Captain Crag Sparrow, and we still do not know at the moment when strikes will be conducted. It is still a grand mystery at this moment. However, we do understand that as far as strikes are concerned in the Middle East, there is going to be a large number of them underway due to the fact that 3 U.S. soldiers were unfortunately slain at the ambush at Palmyra. But we will be covering all of this news and a whole bunch of other news over the course of this entire stream, starting with our largest stories first, and then working our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night, as tradition dictates. But we do have to point out that tonight is a Sunday night fundraiser for none other than Razum for Ukraine, an absolutely incredible fundraiser that's been helping out in Ukraine for years and continues to help out in saving citizens of Ukraine from the perilous conditions of the front line, and also helping to assist with further operations and support for the Ukrainian armed forces and their ability to get a successful career and livelihood, and to also support the armed forces while they're currently serving. They do not provide any armed equipment to the Ukrainian army, but they do provide humanitarian assistance to the soldiers of the Ukrainian armed forces and assistance programs to help them out with not only continuing to fight in support of the state of Ukraine, but also show that not only the state of Ukraine is behind them, but the entire world is as well, especially the Lee Spring Army. But with that, we are going to be moving on into our major news of the day, which is going to be moving us on down and into the Middle East, as significant news is still coming out of the Syrian interim government at this point. We will have to confide, as usual, the Syrian civil war map on Wikipedia, which is actually one of the most complete maps that currently exists out there in the world. This map actually is generally produced by the Institute for the Study of War, but it is republished here on Wikipedia. And once again, to show you all the lay of the land right now, this is the current map of what exists of the former Syrian Arab Republic, which now exists in multiple different factions. Within white is the Syrian interim government. The areas in gray are generally assumed to be under Syrian interim government control. The area down here in the purplish pink is controlled by the Druze. The area in green is controlled by the Syrian Free Army. The light green circle that exists inside of this area below the green blob is actually the At-Tanf garrison, which is an American security perimeter still operated by the United States of America, and largely housing the only remaining U.S. forces in country at the moment. Within yellow is the Syrian Democratic Forces, and then in the light green, up at the top of the map, that would actually be the Republic of Turkey and its occupational zones that it has held for quite literally years at this point. At the moment, we are understanding that there has been an attack on U.S. forces at Palmyra yesterday, which resulted in the unfortunate deaths of 3 U.S. soldiers and the wounding of many others, and we have now heard that within a much smaller town that doesn't really stick out too much, at least to a lot of people, which would be the town of Marat al-Numan, we have now heard of another attack that has apparently been conducted by ISIS forces, not against the United States of America, but this time against the Syrian interim government's forces. According to a statement by the Syrian interim government, they were able to state, and I'll actually read you all the statement here before we get to the only picture that's been given at the moment, that 4 members of the road security department at the Ministry of Interior were martyred, and a 5th member was injured following a targeting incident that one of the patrols came under while carrying out its duties in the Marat al-Numan road south of the Idlib government. That was the direct statement today by the Syrian Ministry of the Interior, and this is one of the pictures that has been given by the Syrian Interior Ministry of the aftermath of the attack. The side of the truck being used by the road service is riddled with bullet holes. We are unsure what calibers were used and what types of small arms fire were directed at the vehicles, but we understand that these vehicles were unarmed, meaning that most rounds were going to puncture clean through the vehicle no matter what caliber they were. From what we understand, 4 members of the Syrian interim government's interior ministry were killed in the course of the attack, along with a 5th one being injured. They apparently were able to fend off the ISIS attackers within the city, but still, this is now showing that ISIS is not only conducting attacks against the United States Armed Forces, conducting their patrols within the desolate regions around the Palmyra government, but they're also conducting attacks within a fairly populated area. The entirety of western Syria, generally from around the area where I'm moving my mouse cursor here and everything west, is the populated area of the Syrian interim government, or Syria as a whole. Most people in the country actually live somewhere within the western part of the country. Around 90% of them do. The rest of them live within scattered cities around the rest of the country, either directly along the Euphrates River or somewhere within the desert, like Palmyra, which is an incredibly small part of the population. The fact that this attack is being conducted not only against U.S. forces, but against Syrian interim government forces, is starting to show us that at the moment, the depth and scope of ISIS attacks within the region is expanding day over day, and they're not only conducting a campaign against U.S. forces that are still inside of Syria, they're now conducting attacks against the former HTS, or the Tahrir Tahrir al-Sham, which almost sounds like some sort of like a witchcraft spell from a cartoon. But nevertheless, it does appear that they're now going to be conducting attacks against the new government as well, and this is an incredibly interesting sort of a development. Not only due to the fact that they're attacking the SIG, but more so due to the fact that the SIG generally was created out of the HTS, which at one point was on the terrorist designation until just a couple of months ago this year. And not only that, its leader, al-Jilani, was actually on the FBI's wanted list with a bounty of about 25 million US dollars for any information that would lead to his arrest. What's even more shocking about this, folks, is that a lot of people don't know this at all, but the HTS was not called the HTS at a time. It was actually a shoot-off of Al-Qaeda called al-Nusra. And, well, it was not the al-Nusra that is famed within northern Iraq that we talk about from time to time now. It was actually a different version of the al-Nusra. But what's even crazier, folks, is that the writ of authority that al-Jilani got from his Al-Qaeda overlords to create the HTS actually came from none other than al-Baghdadi, who would end up becoming the founder and leader of the evolved version of Al-Qaeda, which is the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or as it's sometimes called, ISIL, which is the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. That is actually where the HTS came from. That's where the downfall of the Assad regime eventually coalesced. And now the guy who got the authority from al-Baghdadi to create his own terrorist group within Idlib as an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, is now in charge of Syria, and not only that, his government and his forces are now being attacked by ISIS, which was once the authority that gave him the permission to create his original terrorist group. That is something that is quite interesting, and it is also showing that apparently al-Jilani, and there's a huge amount, by the way, that actually goes into terrorist foreign policy. Crazily enough, they actually have their own beefs with each other and create alliances and break them fairly often. And while al-Baghdadi did give the approval for al-Jilani to create the al-Nusra group based out of Idlib, it also ended up eventually souring as a relationship, and we did see that later on, when the Islamic State started to turn against the HTS and started to conduct attacks against them during the time of the rise of ISIS in the mid-2010s, the HTS actually fought against ISIS generally to maintain its own control of its own region within northern Syria. They would succeed in that, of course, because they eventually overthrew the Assad government because they survived. But most importantly, it appears that ISIS is now having an issue with the Syrian interim government, once again largely affiliated with its prior connections being the HTS, and are now conducting attacks against them and the United States of America. It is possible, folks, that the ISIS cells within the region are starting to become active due to the fact that al-Jilani is taking actions that are generally aligning the Syrian interim government with the Western world, including the United States of America. The fact that an attack was conducted against American troops yesterday and the Syrian interim government today would lead us to believe that ISIS is seeing, at least in their own ideological perspective, that the new Syrian government is actually moving away from their core tenets and values, and for that reason, considering that they're aligning with the quote-unquote infidel, which we are the infidel, they're now going to be conducting attacks not only against U.S. forces there, but also against the Syrian interim government as well. More importantly,
But also, ISIS never really went away. Like that's a misunderstanding that a lot of people have, because there were statements being made by government officials that they had wiped out ISIS completely and they were gone. And while that would be great if ISIS was wiped out, that's simply not the case. You can't wipe out a decentralized organization like that. It's almost impossible to wipe it out because it's an ideology. It's not necessarily like a very formal structure to it. It's more of like a loose coalition of people, like we said before, that's roaming around the region causing hell. So me personally, ISIS never left Syria. Like that's what we've understood for a while. They've never left. They've been lying in wait the entire time for the opportune time for them to rise back up like they're doing right now and start causing hell. And apparently right now is the time, for whatever reason, either like you mentioned, they've gotten tired of the current Jilani regime and they're wanting to rise back up to take him out of power, or maybe they've simply had time to reconstitute their forces and maybe they have enough manpower to try to take him out at this point. So it's truly a cancer on the region, and unfortunately, it's very hard to isolate that cancer and totally eliminate it. It's going to be there, so it seems like we're going to be dealing with it going forward. It's a really big problem for Jelani and also the U.S. too.
The thing about terrorist groups that is incredibly unfortunate about them is that they blend in with civilians and they're asymmetrical in how they conduct warfare. It makes it difficult, if not completely impossible, to ever eradicate or destroy them. And not only that, the other problem with a group like this is that you can never completely destroy an idea. The idea will always exist, even if we ended up back in 2018 when we announced the complete eradication of ISIS. Even if we had ended up taking out and killing every single person who had ever been affiliated with ISIS, their writings and teachings still would have been floating around out there somewhere for someone else to pick up onto and then carry on that struggle, which is an absolutely insano one if you look at what they believe. But there would have been someone who would have done that. And that's generally the issue. Once ISIS started to see that an international coalition was created against them and that their land holdings and forces were beginning to collapse against the overwhelming weight of that coalition, a lot of these guys just put down the guns or generally hid them, dressed up in their normal clothes, and then just blended back in with civilian life. They were still ISIS terrorists the whole time, and we claimed that we completely destroyed them. But they just went into hiding, generally. They just went underground and just blended in with everyone else until they believed that the time was ripe to start conducting more actions in support of their own beliefs. And that time is apparently now. Something has apparently caused them to do this. And considering that we're also seeing other attacks that have been conducted, unfortunately, today in Australia and what appears to be the United States that is affiliated with ISIS, it's highly likely that they will be coming out with some sort of a public announcement as to a declaration of some form of a new jihad or something along those lines, and they'll most likely give some form of an explanation as to the exact root causes that are leading them to start rearing up their heads again. The fact that they're rearing up their heads again, though, does give us a chance to start wiping out the active combatants that are involved in the group currently. But once again, this is going to be a situation that's going to take an incredibly long time to deal with and fix. And
Also another thing as well, remember that Russia has just suffered a major defeat by getting kicked out of Syria. So that's still on the Russians' mind as well, because whenever these groups start rearing their head back up again, the initial question is, how are they able to do that? Number one, where are they getting money from to carry the stuff out? And number three, where are they getting the weapons? Now, obviously, they already had some weapons to begin with, so they already have a pre-existing stockpile. But I would imagine, though, with Russia still being very, very sore about getting kicked out of Syria, I would not be surprised to see that Russia has been trying to help reconstitute that faction, so that way they can try to oust the pro-Western, or at least pretend pro-Western, Jelani regime, because Putin's probably not very happy about that whole situation.
I would say that he's probably not at all happy about that situation. I definitely agree. But on top of that, we also need to find out, this is a very important thing for us to find out, folks, who in the world is helping to sponsor ISIS at the moment. Whenever there's a terrorist group, there always is usually some form of a sponsor out there that's giving them money and weaponry. We need to find out who that is, because the weapons don't just materialize in a cave somewhere that they go and grab out of. It's not the damn cornucopia. You can't just walk into every cave in the Middle East and come out laden with RPGs and a whole bunch of LMG rounds. That's pretty difficult to come up with. There's got to be someone out there that's funding this group and arming them. And I think that once we start to wipe out enough of these guys again here soon, and we start to take a look at their weaponry, if we start to see any reoccurring trend in the origin nationally of their weapons, that might give us a pretty good idea of who's equipping them. If it's old beater stuff, it's most likely the Iranians. If it's something that looks kind of a little bit new, but not really, it's most likely going to be the Russians. And if it's Chinese, you can just tell. I mean, Chinese weaponry is quite practically new. It's made in Norinco factories by the gazillions, so all of it will generally be fresher looking, and also Chinese weapons are fairly distinct in many different ways, so for that reason, it'll give us a bit of an idea of who's actually funding this group and trying to support them at the moment. But someone has got to be out there financing them. Terrorist groups do not survive in a vacuum. Someone is always supporting them. So it's going to be important for the United States intelligence committees or intelligence agencies to get out there and figure out who in the world is funding them and who in the world is supporting them, because if we can figure that out, we can start to figure out what kind of a monster we're dealing with these days and how to start trying to deal with that a little bit more effectively, given the lay of the land at that point. Moving us on out of the Middle East directly, though, and speaking of the developments that are going on right now within Marat al-Numan, we are going to be moving really quickly down and into Palmyra. as we were able to hear that the Syrian interim government has apparently conducted arrests. You can actually see the Syrian interim government here, and for a second, folks, I actually thought that this was a picture of ISIS. The way that they're all dressed in black with AKs on the back of pickups. I'm not going to lie, it's going to be a little bit hard to tell who's who. But they did conduct arrests of suspects within the Palmyra area that were believed to have been involved in the attacks yesterday, which also, folks, is showing us that apparently, at least at the moment, the United States may have known a little bit about who may have conducted the attack, but it actually appears that the Syrian interim government is the one who apparently has the jump or a little bit more of the know-how on who exactly conducted the attacks, because I can promise you, if we knew who conducted the attacks, these people wouldn't be alive right now. They would have been hit with a Ginsu bomb overnight, they would be dead by now. But interestingly enough, they're being arrested by the Syrian interim government, which is leading me to believe that the United States may have not actually had enough intelligence to be able to discern the exact people, individuals, and names of the individuals that were involved to be able to start conducting reciprocal strikes directly against them immediately after the attack occurred. Moving us also...
I would say definitely not. They definitely didn't have the intel, because if they had the intel on who these guys were, where they were operating, and what they were planning, they could have prevented the deaths of those soldiers, those U.S. soldiers that unfortunately passed away and were attacked. They could have probably prevented that. So there was some blind spot, like there was a gap in intelligence somewhere that led to those soldiers getting taken out, because otherwise they should have had warning about that. So I would be, honestly, I'm kind of surprised the Syrians even know who did it. It could be maybe the Syrians are simply going out and, taking guesses at who it is and arresting people for the appearance of it. It could be that as well. But it seems like there's a huge gap in intelligence.
It does seem so. If we start to see the U.S. starts conducting drone strikes, or Ginsu strikes is what they're usually conducting these days, against specific targets by name, then we'll know that U.S. intelligence apparently was trying to gather the information post-attack to figure out who was responsible and who to obliterate as a result of that. But for now, it appears that there was some form of an intelligence lapse, at least at the moment, that has led to the Syrian interim government apparently having to take the reins and try and find the possible suspects who were involved in the attack, rather than knowing outright who they were to be able to conduct reciprocal strikes. A lot of people are talking at the moment about this internal situation in Syria. Before I move you all into the greater picture that's happened in Australia and America today, that makes this appear that this is a larger campaign being conducted by ISIS at the moment. But a lot of people are talking about the fact that these ISIS attacks not only have been conducted in Palmyra, but have now been conducted in Marat al-Numan, within a very populated area of Syria along a major motorway. The fact that this is going on is leading a lot of people to believe that the Syrian interim government's control of the country is, like we already have known, incredibly unstable and is prone to collapsing. We do understand that the Druze rebellion, and not only that, the massacres that the Syrian interim government conducted on the Alawite coast, are generally conducive to the idea that the Syrian interim government is desperately trying to hang on to some form of control over a large part of the country, when it really doesn't have the apparatus or ability to carry out that form of control. And the fact that these ISIS attacks are now expanding, at least in their geographical region, it's also leading a lot of people to believe that there may be a possibility of the Syrian government destabilizing and collapsing again due to its weak condition that we see it in right now. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So we did see yesterday, unfortunately, the U.S. forces did get attacked, and we did have several casualties, actually, which is very unfortunate to say the least, a huge tragedy. And now we're seeing today that Syria is reporting 4 separate ambush attacks by ISIS over the last 48 hours. So apparently ISIS jumped in and decided to eliminate all doubt about who was conducting this, because there was some speculation yesterday that maybe it was a rogue Syrian security officer that might have conducted it that went berserk. But now today, apparently the doubt has been erased by these current actions. So what are your thoughts about the current situation? And 48% said Syria is likely about to collapse again, while 29% said the USA will likely be returning to Syria now that this is occurring, and 13% said it's all just temporary issues and it will subside very soon. Now, unfortunately, Syria is a country known for being embroiled in chaos and turmoil. It's an unfortunate state of the country, and it kind of stays in that state 24/7. So I don't have very high hopes for this. The Syrian government right now is not in very good shape. It's not very well organized or cohesive. And once again, they have a guy with an extremely sketchy past in charge of the country right now. So that's not a good start. So if ISIS starts rearing its head back up again and challenging Jelani's regime, we could see that Syria is literally on the brink of collapse within just weeks. It could happen that quickly. So Me personally, I am not optimistic about it. And once again, the U.S. only has 1,000 troops left inside of Syria. We can, of course, summon some aircraft from other nearby countries to perform airstrikes in Syria on the ISIS targets, but we don't have a large amount of ground forces to deploy on the ground to deal with the situation. So once the dominoes start to fall inside of Syria and Jelani starts basically slipping at that point, it could go quickly. So once again, Syria's on the brink of collapse, and I'm actually with the 48%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that Syria is very fragile at the moment, and it is most likely prone to collapse. The Syrian interim government has not been able to solidify control within the country due to its radical approach to the situation. The Syrian interim government initially saw very little resistance from most minority populations within the country due to the fact that the Syrian interim government's leader, al-Jilani at the time, who still is the leader, stated that he would be making a Syria for all Syrians, regardless of their ethnic background or religious preference. That illusion soon disappeared after the Druze people were openly being mistreated by the Syrian interim government's forces within the As-Sawaida government, which led to uprisings not only within As-Sawaida, but also within the Alawite coast. To give you all a little bit of a breakdown here of what Syria looks like, Syria ethnic map. Let me go find this for y'all really quickly, because this is a very important thing to talk about. Yes, here we go. This is actually quite a good one. Oh, no, come here. Man, like, that was about to mess up the whole computer screen, but this right here is a pretty decent map of the different sorts of cultural groups, or ethnic points, or ethnic groups that we find within Syria today. As you can note, the largest number of them, the yellow ones, are the Sunni Arabs. These are generally the people that the Syrian interim government generally supports. Down here in the little purple area, right down here, these are the Druze. Up here in the lighter red, those are actually Levantine Christians. And then you also have the Alawite Arabs of the coastline, among many other groups. There's about more than a dozen different ethnic groups within the country. The Sunni Arabs actually make up the large majority of the country, a little over 50%. But the rest of the country, around 40%, is made up of over a dozen different ethnic groups, with different religions, different preferences of the Islamic faith, or different sects of the Islamic faith, among many other things, which causes a great deal of issues ruling the country with some sort of a theocratic principle, because you're going to see that at least 40% of the country will have significant animosity, and that will lead to endless conflict. The HDS started to make it clear, or more so, the Syrian interim government under al-Jilani started to make it quite clear after they took control that they were really only going to be supporting the Sunni Arab interests in the country and no one else's. That's why we saw uprisings within the Alawite Arab coastline, which still are ongoing to a small degree today, and we also saw a complete rebellion of the Druze people within the As-Sawaida government, which has created pretty much its own autonomous state within that region. We're also seeing that because of this, that is the main reason why the Kurds of the northern part of the country have not rejoined or are affiliating themselves with the Syrian interim government either, is because they watched the massacres that happened at the Alawite coast and also down in the As-Sawaida government, and they decided that they didn't want to be a part of that, and that's why they're still an independent faction to this day, separate from the SIG. So because the Syrian interim government is run by a radical Islamic terrorist group that's generally trying to disguise itself or pose itself as a bit of a neutral, middle-of-the-road sort of a government, a lot of people aren't buying into that, and it's causing a great deal of instability within the country. And now it appears, not only that, it may be that Jelani's more Western-leaning approach to aligning himself with European leaders, or Western leaders like that of the United States and others, is also leading other groups like ISIS, which have a literal sworn-in devotion to hating any Western state, may now be rising up and conducting attacks not only against the U.S., but also against the Syrian interim government for aligning themselves with the infidels, according to their own ideology. So that may be a very bad situation, at least for the Syrian interim government, and we could see that the region could devolve into radical Islamic extremism again, much like it did about the same time 10 years ago, which wouldn't really be a good outcome.
And it's even worse than that, too, because ISIS is particularly vicious. Like, that group is by far, in my opinion, the worst of the terror groups. Number one, they're very secretive, and also they don't go out in public quite like the other groups do. Like, for example, the Taliban, if you look at Hamas, Hezbollah, etc., they all have usually a very clear front runner or a leader of the group. Even though they are generally decentralized, you can generally tell who's in charge of it, at least as the figurehead of the group. ISIS, on the other hand, they stay extremely secretive. They also lay very low, and that's the danger behind them. You're not really ever sure how ISIS is actually doing until they decide to strike. And by that time, it's usually too late. They've usually built up more forces at that point, and now they're stronger, and now they're a huge problem to deal with. Also, by the way, ISIS attacks other jihadist groups. Like, they eat themselves, basically. So they go around attacking other groups, like, for example, Jelani's group of thugs and terrorists. They go and attack them, and that's why ISIS is hated by other groups in the Middle East, because they are literally basically the chaos candidate. They come in and they take out everybody. ISIS is not discriminatory about who they're taking out. They especially hate the West, but they'll take their own kind out if it means, advancing their own interests. They don't have any bones to make about that. So that's why that group is so dangerous. And also, they just don't go away. Like, that group perseveres. There's been many administrations in the United States that's tried to wipe out ISIS and get rid of it, and they simply can't. They've tried their damnedest to get rid of that group, and they just stick around. It's just almost impossible to get rid of them. So the only they can do is try to manage them. You can try to keep them, like, at bay for as long as possible, but naturally, they are going to rear their head back up, and they're also doing probably plenty of recruiting across many different Middle Eastern countries while they're laying low. And now we're at the same point yet again.
Also, I see some people saying in the chat that because of this, the U.S. ought to just pack up and leave Syria, which I have to say, can you all come up with anything smarter? Like, to the people who are saying that, can anyone come up with anything smarter than just whenever there's resistance, we pack up and leave? Do you know what's going to happen if we leave? If we leave, we're now going to leave the Syrian interim government to get eaten alive by ISIS. We're going to be pretty much allowing ISIS to take tons of land in the area and probably get control of some oil fields, just like they did back in the mid-2010s, to go and sell that oil on the black market, make money to be able to fund their terrorist operations elsewhere, and that means that those terrorist attacks are going to be coming to you. Do y'all remember back in the mid-2010s, all of those terrorist attacks that ISIS was conducting in the U.S. and everywhere else in Europe and the Western world, because they actually had money to be able to fund those operations on their own, self-sufficiently, because of their black market oil trading? They were conducting attacks everywhere. Dozens of people in every single country here in the Western world were dying from their terrorist attacks, where they would home grow a terrorist here in the United States in their own little ISIS terror cell, and then give them the money, the funds, and the ability to go out and conduct an attack in the name of their group. We do not want that. Like, this is something that will directly affect us, because these people are asymmetrical, and not only that, they don't have to get on a plane and fly over here to conduct those attacks. People in the United States are great and wonderful people, but there are a lot of people out there who are very misled and will devolve into extremism if they can. And considering that we did see back in the early 2010s and the mid-2010s a great example of that, where they would just radicalize people online through multiple different sorts of websites and institutes on the internet, and get these people to carry out these heinous attacks on their behalf, and they didn't even have to come over here and step on our shores to conduct these attacks. They got some of our own people to go and do them because they radicalized them through the internet. That's something we do not want to happen.
Yeah, you don't want that to happen either. And just to give you an idea real quick of exactly how bad ISIS is, because everybody knows that generally ISIS is bad. Most people know that. But just to give you an example, Al-Qaeda, which is obviously, everybody knows about Al-Qaeda, one of the worst terror groups out there. Generally, they're kind of around, they're under new names and they're under different splinter factions. But Al-Qaeda publicly disavowed ISIS. That's how bad ISIS is. Even Al-Qaeda disavowed them. And that's pretty damn bad for them to do that. Also, the Taliban views ISIS-K as a direct enemy as well. Even the Taliban do inside of Afghanistan. Even Hamas and Hezbollah are against ISIS. So I mean, when other terror groups start saying, "Hey, wait a minute, that's pretty damn bad. Yeah, that's a bad group," and they know these groups also know as well that if ISIS is not maintained or kept under control in their own corner over there off to the side, then ISIS will start attacking them as well. These other terror groups, and also attack the West too. So I mean, everybody's got a reason to want to basically eliminate that ISIS group, because they want to attack and basically wipe out everybody.
Yeah, they certainly do. And also, someone just said, okay, send your kids to fight this hopeless war. You know, that's such a stupid assessment right there. I'll tell you why. Because you say that, and if they don't go over there and they don't end up fighting this needless war, there's going to be a time when you go to the airport to go fly to meet your family on Thanksgiving, and who knows, your plane you're on might get blown up, or the airport you're in might get blown up, or the train station you're going to might get blown up. That's a really stupid way of looking at it, and I know that that's like the vogue thing to look at the stuff in a stupid two-dimensional aspect to where nobody can ever connect big picture dots to understand why it's important for us to go over in these areas and contain these people where they're at so that they can't get money, so that way they can't get an ability to conduct attacks here in the United States. But for people who actually have some sense, you can connect the dots and see that it would make a great deal of sense that the United States of America, much like the president's saying right now, goes over there and deals with these people before they end up becoming a significant threat like they were in the mid-2010s. There were people dying left and right here in America in the mid-2010s from terrorist attacks from people that were homegrown in America that were conducting these attacks in the name of ISIS. We do not want ISIS to get the funding. We do not want the ISIS forces to get the strength nor the ability to recruit and then fund any domestic terrorist cells within the United States to conduct attacks like that again. You might not be smart enough to see that, but I'm sure many other people here are definitely smart enough to see the reason why we need to ensure that these people never have a chance to conduct an attack like that on U.S. soil or anyone's soil in the Western Sphere ever again. But with that, we are going to be moving on out of this news, and we are going to be moving on into some other news that is attached to it outside of Syria and inside of Australia at Bondi Beach in Sydney. Unfortunately, today we do have to report, very unfortunately, that a major attack did occur at Bondi Beach in Sydney, and it does appear that these attackers were actually involved with the very sorts of groups that I was just describing a moment ago that were conducting their attacks in the United States. An ISIS flag has been found within the car of one of the attackers at the Bondi Beach, and it does appear that this attack at this moment appears to be completely affiliated or coordinated with ISIS that is once again existent still underground within the Middle East. We're also hearing, although I do not have any bulletins on the map for this, that it appears that the Brown University shooting is being investigated at the moment as a possible terrorist attack by the FBI and may also have some connection to ISIS, although at the moment that's incredibly unclear, and we're waiting for the results of the Federal Bureau of Investigation's inquiry into the matter to see what exactly comes out of it and whether or not it's involved in a terrorist attack. Unfortunately, we can't really talk about this a lot. Thankfully, YouTube does have terms of service where we can get you all of the brutal details of what happened today at Bondi Beach. But quite unfortunately, the attack was conducted by two gunmen at Bondi Beach using what appeared to have been bolt-action rifles. They appear to have been well-trained and conducted what is called within the target shooting world, or really the the shooting world, what would be called a mad minute, which takes a decent amount of training and skill to be able to conduct, where they were able to fire off a bolt-action rifle at a fairly high rate of fire, and they were able to wound and kill a large score of people at Bondi Beach over the course of the day. Luckily, some citizens from the surrounding area near to the beach were actually able to neutralize the gunmen before they could kill any further people by taking them down or directly wrestling with them for control of the guns that they had. But at the moment, this does appear to be showing that ISIS is not only rearing its head inside of Syria, but it's also starting to rear its head around the entirety of the world, and possibly this will start to affect us here at home very soon. A lot of people are, of course, going to be concerned about that, but one thing I do have to tell y'all, folks, is that no matter what, we can never show fear in the face of the enemy. These forces will show up just about anywhere and everywhere. They will conduct attacks anywhere and everywhere to strike fear in our people. And you could never be allowed to show fear in the face of these people. These people are terrorists. They thrive and succeed and achieve victory off of instilling fear within the people. And for that reason, you cannot let these people put fear within you. You cannot let these people put fear within the country. And if anything, we need to show strong resolve. The United States president did state today, in a very good statement I might add, that reprisals will be conducted against ISIS forces within the region, and there will be significant amounts of damage that will be conducted to them and their forces wherever they may be within the area. That is generally the response that we should have, and if anything, we should not back off. We should go right over there and bring the fight right back into their own backyard. They're not coming over here to the United States, and then ain't going to have the chance to radicalize anyone here in the United States, because we're going to stop them right at the source before they can do any of that. So, of course, A lot of people are also talking and wondering about who in the world is helping ISIS to rear its head inside of Syria and apparently around the rest of the world with the domestic terror groups that they are affiliated with and also radicalize. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So the key question right now, like the enforcer just mentioned, is why is this really terrible terrorist group seemingly rearing its head yet again, not only in the Middle East, but also in attacks apparently around the world on innocent civilians? Once again, that terrible group there is right back to their old antics. And it looks like 44% said that group had time to rebuild its forces, and now was simply the time they decided to launch them. And 35% said Russia is likely funding and prodding the ISIS terrorists, and 14% said they got politically triggered by recent events with the West and also the Jelani regime inside of Syria. So my current prediction is this. I would lean toward the idea that Russia likely is funding and prodding those groups because, remember, Russia is currently engaged in hybrid warfare against the West. So naturally, this terror group right here is going to be carrying out, likely, like we've just seen, very horrific and heinous attacks on the West, which they're currently doing right now, which is in Russia's interest. Russia does usually fund things like that to cause havoc and hell in the West. Also, by the way, Russia is very unhappy about getting kicked out of Syria. And once again, the group that is currently carrying out these attacks is based in Syria, in the, I believe it's the eastern part of the country. So this group right here, in my opinion, likely is getting funded by Russia, and Russia probably is trying to persuade them to go even further with what they're doing for their own political gain. So I'm with the 36%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I'm going to generally be with the 36% as well. I would assume that some foreign power is funding them, and it may possibly be the Russian Federation, because the Russian Federation generally does support and encourage terrorist groups and operations, and they do not align themselves with any nice people. You can be assured of that. So I would generally say that that's a decent likelihood, considering that in the past, we did hear that Russia was willing to provide direct support to Hezbollah within southern Lebanon, or at least entertain the idea of conducting direct support, because it was going to be going against U.S. interests to support groups that were fighting the Israelis, or generally supporting the Iranian front within that area. So it wouldn't be out of the question that Russia would try and support a group like ISIS. Although, by the way, there is actually a group called ISIS-K that exists within southern Russia that is causing a significant amount of issues, but ISIS-K is not directly affiliated with ISIS, who is basically the main franchise of the terrorist group that exists within the Middle East. Also, I've seen a lot of people in the chat bringing up the whole deal of, is it ISIS or ISIL? Technically, it's ISIL. And I'll explain the difference here because a lot of people don't get it. ISIS stands for the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. And generally, that was the name that was given when we thought that they were only wanting to achieve their ability of taking over most of what is the Republic of Iraq and most of what was, at the time, the Syrian Arab Republic. That was what we thought at the moment. But later on, around 2015 or so, they started to announce that they wanted to take control of this area called the Levant, which doesn't just include Syria. The Levant is actually pretty much the entirety of the Near East, basically. By the way, the entire Middle East is not the Middle East. It's actually three different regions: the Near East, the Middle East, and the Far East, all within the name, the Middle East. But this is the area that we actually started to hear that ISIS was wanting to take control of outside of Iraq. Basically, what they were wanting to do is see that no nation existed between Turkey and Saudi Arabia except for their own Islamic State, and that would include Iraq and the Levant. So that's why the name started to change in a lot of, generally, I guess you could say, academic circles to call them ISIL more so than ISIS. Either name applies, and either name is the same group, but that's generally what the ISIL or ISIS group wants to achieve as a territorial claim, is the entirety of Iraq and the Levant. And they've also stated that their land claims will go even farther than that eventually, but that's, according to them, their first stepping stone to create the true Islamic State that they're looking for. And also, folks, just to add a little bit of information for y'all, these people in this group are the most radical that's ever been seen. They are so radical that back in the day, when they actually controlled larger parts of Syria and Iraq, they would go around to historical sites like Roman ruins, and they would obliterate them with dynamite, because the idea of a culture or a history existing that was not directly related to their extreme ideological beliefs was believed to be haram, and therefore it was to be destroyed, which is absolutely insane, because no group, no no nation within the area has ever destroyed historical ruins at all. Like that's something that has rarely ever, if ever, been done. And the only time that we've seen that happen before was actually when the Taliban took control of Afghanistan in the late 90s, when they destroyed the statues of Bamyan, if I'm saying that correctly, which were two large Buddhas that were built into the side of a cliff face. The Taliban also went up to that as well and destroyed that with dynamite, and now the Buddhas of Bamyan do not exist either. But ISIS would conduct that quite often. There was actually a lot of archaeological ruins that were completely destroyed due to their actions. Crazily enough, fortunately, the ruins at Palmyra have actually ended up surviving, although it was a battlefield at one point that was incredibly close to the ISIS front lines. The Assad regime was actually able to stop the ISIS forces from advancing into the city, and so for that reason, a lot of the old Roman remains here actually still stand to this day. Quite fortunately, that is. Otherwise, they would have been completely destroyed. So it's just a bit of a side effect there.
Such a bad group, really. Honestly, though, it makes me concerned because you see all this, and obviously my initial reaction is, well, this group has to be suppressed by the U.S. military. That's my initial reaction. Or somebody's got to go in and suppress that ISIS group. They've got to, because they can't be allowed. For example, if they start rising up against the Jelani regime, even though I don't like Jelani very much at all, I'll be totally honest, he's very, very sketchy. But currently, he is trying to make a pretend effort to be aligned with the West, so that's better than nothing. But at the same time, though, ISIS cannot be allowed to take over Syria, like in oust Jelani. They simply cannot be allowed to do that. So what is the United States going to have to do? Are we going to recommit troops to Syria, which is obviously not very ideal, to say the least? Or what do we have to do here? Because we're going to do something. And once again, I saw a lot of people saying, well, why the hell would Russia support ISIS? Like, why would Russia really do that? It seems silly. Well, I mean, that would be in Russia's interest to get the U.S. bogged down inside of Syria. If Russia could get us bogged down in Venezuela, Syria, etc., that is like gold for Russia. That gives them all the permission they need to be able to do more expansion of operations in Europe without much U.S. interference in the future, because we'd get bogged down in multiple different areas around the world, like Venezuela and South America and the Middle East. So, I mean, it could be Iran, Russia, it could be both of them together trying to support this group. But whatever the case is, that group cannot be allowed to take power. That is an imperative prerogative right there to keep that group down and out.
It really is. It's a number one priority to nip these groups in the bud before they can grow and expand. If we do not, they end up becoming monsters that we have to deal with later. For example, I mean, we can just, I don't know why in the world this stuff is new to folks. Like, and it's not new to a whole lot of folks, to be honest with y'all. I say that sort of stuff out of frustration for the small minority that's like 10% or less of the U.S. population that says or believes these sorts of approaches, because it's not like it's something that is beyond their time. I mean, we literally lived through this back in the 2010s. I lived through it. Everyone lived through it. Y'all remember, and I'll just be flat out. Y'all remember when the Obama administration saw ISIS rising within the Middle East, and then they went, oh, it's a really crazy group. They probably won't get anywhere because they're so nuts. Even the terrorist groups are disavowing them, so they probably won't do anything. And so we just ignored them, and then they became this giant region within the area. They pretty much took control of all of eastern Syria and most of northern and western Iraq. It became a huge issue. Then we had to go in 2015 under that same administration to start destroying them. And then in the next administration, or the Trump administration, we generally crushed all of their land holdings, but then they just went underground. That was what happened. It's not like this is something where we have to go, oh, let me pull some abstract historical example out of my ass from 100 years ago. This literally happened 10 years ago. I don't know why people sit there and say, oh, we ought to just pack up and leave. You know what happened when we were there and we just completely ignored them? Bad things happened. Not only there, but also here. It directly affected us in the United States. It's not like you have to sit there and be some sort of a genius or a scholar. You just have to have a little bit of a brain to remember what happened 10 years ago, and then go, we don't want what happened 10 years ago to happen again a second time. That's why we need to send U.S. forces into Syria and destroy these people before they could even have a chance to even get land holdings at all. They need to remain in their small little cells as they are right now, to where they'll conduct a possible attack against U.S. or SIG forces, and then we start slamming them with airstrikes until there's no one left standing. That's what we should be doing at the moment.
But then the question is Jelani going to be in favor of that? Because Now, obviously, if Jelani's regime starts getting threatened by ISIS in a really serious way, that might change Jelani's perspective a little bit. But previously, though, we had heard that Jelani did not want U.S. troops inside of Syria. He did not want that. And that's why it was reduced down to 1,000 that's currently at right now. So I would imagine if it comes between Jelani staying in power or getting ousted by ISIS, I would imagine Jelani would probably support U.S. troops in the country. But the question still remains, is he extreme enough to say that he's not going to want any type of U.S. interference? Or will he change his mind?
Well, here's what I would say to Jelani. I would just tell y'all what I would say as the president of the United States. We are going to do if we are going to allow y'all to have a chance to destroy them. We'll give y'all 2 months, and if it appears that y'all are losing control of the situation within those 2 months or at the deadline of that 2 months, we're getting involved in Syria, and there's nothing you're going to do about it. Otherwise, you're going to be calling upon the wrath of the United States on your own government. So you can either try and deal with them now, and if you fail, we're going to get involved. And if in 2 months they're still around, we're going to get involved anyways. And you better pray to God that not a single U.S. soldier is shot at or harmed by your forces. That's what my approach would be, because we can't play around with this. It's like, if the Syrian interim government didn't want us to be involved inside of their territory right now, having to bomb ISIS, they should have been in control of the country enough already that they were able to suppress them before they became an issue.
Yeah, I don't think they were powerful enough to suppress ISIS, to be honest with you. I don't think Jelani's people had enough manpower or the bandwidth to deal with it, because they were simply trying to get control of the country. Like, for example, from Assad, they were simply trying to take the thing over. So once they took it over, it was very, very shaky at first, and now they're trying to solidify their power as the quote-unquote legitimate government of Syria, which is still, honestly, in my opinion, still very shaky. They're still trying to establish themselves as legitimate. So to take on ISIS, which is a huge undertaking, by the way, that's not a minor undertaking. I don't think they have the bandwidth for it, to be perfectly honest with you.
I don't think they do, and I also don't think they'll be putting up a significant protest if we went in to just start dealing with them on our own. But I'll also be honest with y'all, folks, this will affect everyone in Europe as well. What we should be trying to do, while my esophagus just collapsed out of the blue right there for a moment, what we should be trying to do is we should be getting our ambassadors to a whole load of European countries to get together and start an international coalition to go deal with this thing. Because there wasn't just terrorist attacks happening in the United States back in the day. There was terrorist attacks in the UK, in France, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Belgium, and elsewhere throughout the whole of Europe back then. And I'm sure that many of those countries would be all behind chipping in and adding in some forces to the coalition, which not only increases our firepower, but it makes sure that there is an international involvement in crushing these people, which I think would be a very good thing to see, and also might start to smooth over relations with the Europeans, which are becoming strained at this point, by saying, let's all go down there and let's be friends, and let's deal with this common threat together. I think that might be a little bit of a smoothing over moment, at least for our relations at the moment, and hopefully we can recover them from there. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. But we aren't going to be moving on from this unfortunate news that we're now hearing of inside of the former Syrian Arab Republic. And we are going to be moving on into some other major news that we've been able to hear over the course of the day. But before we get into that, I do have to say that the fundraisers reached a whopping $1,470. Holy moly! That's absolutely... Let's go, baby! And that's absolutely incredible, folks. Unbelievable to see. And I do have to say that it's an incredible and wonderful thing to know that so many people continue to support these fundraisers and continue to help out with Western and American interests around the world. We all help out in our own little way. And thanks to all of y'all's support, Ransom for Ukraine is going to be able to help out a great deal of people already, just off of the $1,400 we've raised. And I know one thing's for sure, folks. We are more than halfway to the $2,500 goal, and the Lee Spring Army has never missed a goal historically, and I'm sure that we're not going to miss it tonight, because the Lee Spring Army will never truly die. And so, with that in mind, Matthew, who do we have for the top donors of the night?
All right, so far, our top donors are Nick Hines, who put in a massive $200 support to the fundraiser, and a huge shout to Nick for that massive one. That's the largest donation of the night so far, by the way. And also, a big shout out to Hal Rose, who threw in a $100 support to the fundraiser, as well as Brian Maddox, who also threw in $100, along with Howard Mendelson. And then we had a $50 donation from Robert Krogan, as well as Greg Carrier, David Ferriello, and Chef Danny B. And so far, those are the top donors of the night, and a huge shout out to all the top donors. And like we always say, a huge shout out to everybody else who's thrown in even smaller amounts than that. We would love to call off every single donor, but sadly we can't, because we'd be here literally all night and not be able to cover the news at that point. But we appreciate every single donor for being very generous and helping to support Ukraine yet again. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say a humongous shout out to everyone, both the folks we were able to call out as the top donors, and also everyone else who has supported this fundraiser tonight that we weren't able to call out, because every single one of y'all has done absolutely incredible and amazing work helping to support this fundraiser tonight. Y'all's support is saving lives inside of Ukraine through Razom for Ukraine, and we're wildly appreciative to know that this channel and its community not only listens to the news of what happens in Ukraine every single day, but also helps to support the folks in Ukraine and to help them out. So not only are we covering the news, we're actually having a little bit of an impact on how the war will turn out in the long run. So a humongous thanks to all of y'all so much once again for y'all's unbelievably massive support, and together we will see that the fundraiser reaches its $2,500 goal. And so with that, folks, holy
a
moly!
200 from Prometheus 4130. That's a 200-pounder right there. That's a catch. Look at that. It's now up to $1,815 raised right now. Very, very nice.
That is absolutely incredible right there. And a huge shout out to Prometheus. By the way, I like your profile picture. It looks like it is a Spitfire with something in the cockpit with its head sticking out. But I gotta say, really cool to see, and we absolutely love to know that people are massively supporting this fundraiser all the way from the United Kingdom, showing that the Elite Spring Army is united around the world to continue to support Western American interests, no matter the time, no matter how long it's been going on. As Gonk Meat is throwing in 150.
Let's go, meat. Look at that go.
Man, heavens, the coal mine is hard to work down here. But dang, gonk meat threw in 150. What in the world is a gonk? And why are we eating the meat? But beyond that, I gotta say, a humongous shout out to Gonk Meat for that unbelievably humongous support and also having a really cool name. And so with that,
don't ever say it again. By the way, never say that again, ever.
Dude, I gotta go pull up this creature, the gonk.
Don't ever say what the heck is a gonk and why is it eating the meat. Don't ever say that. Don't ever repeat that.
So apparently, Matthew, this is the gonk.
Oh, it's a furry creature.
So apparently it's gonk meat. So this thing's been killed and it's been cleaned and prepared. So that's what gonk meat is. Apparently it's the meat out of this creature. But that's interesting to know. And we still thank you massively, along with Samuel Zemanski, who just threw in 100, and Patrick Chapdelaine, who threw in 150 as well. Holy moly!
And Anonymous, who threw in 100 as well. Dang!
We're up to $2,341 right now. Holy moly! We didn't even call a general order. A general order hasn't been called in a while, folks, actually. And we are getting very close to the goal. That's truly profound right there. And all within just the past few minutes. But while we're getting incredibly close, and I mean treacherously close to hitting this fundraiser goal, holy moly, I think we had the goal! Hey! Nicholas Condor just threw in a $250. Go ahead.
The goal has been smashed. Look at that. They have smashed the goal. Triple smash on that goal right there. I tell you what, that thing is over the goal right now. $48 over. Very, very nice. Oh, look at it still going in. Look at that. 154 from Anonymous right there.
Man, dang, look at that. I gotta say, a huge shout out to Nicholas Condor, who just threw in that 250 that just surpassed the goal right there, and also the anonymous donor who threw in a $154 donation. Every single one of y'all has helped us to hit the fundraiser goal tonight, and not only that, we're skyrocketing well beyond it, as Gritter Slayer threw in a $200 donation.
Dang.
Holy moly, what's going on? Like, the fundraiser was kind of going, folks, at a little bit of a good walking pace for the start of the stream. Now it's going at a run. Literally over the last few minutes, we've raised something along the lines of $1,500 just within the past 6 minutes or so. This is unbelievable. I got to give a huge shout out to all of y'all once again. And in honor of Hal Rose, who just threw in a $333 donation right there, holy moly, we are going to be getting some questions in honor of all of y'all who have amazingly, heroically, and valiantly continued to show that the Elite Spring Army will never truly die. Put an LSA in the chat if you agree. And Matthew, what do we got for our first question of this segment?
All right. And also, by the way, folks, if you have a question for us tonight, we usually do not do super chats on Sunday, but there's still a thing where you can throw in a super chat anyway, which is not our choice, but it's there nonetheless. We do appreciate our super chatters as well. But we take live chat questions on the Sunday night. So if you have a question for us, tag at It's Enforcer Matt in the live chat and put your question behind it, and I'll add it to the spreadsheet. And hopefully, if we have enough time, we can get to a very large chunk of them. But jumping into our first super chat of the night and then jumping into our live chat questions, this one goes to none other than Duncan VR, who puts in a $25 support. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that super chat. He said, meow quack, what is the best burger place by you? And go get one.
Oh, dang. What is the best burger place by us? I actually wouldn't know. There's a lot of good ones, though. There's a lot of, let's see, there's a lot of JCBs. There's a lot of Crown Burgers. I actually did have a Crown Burger, folks. And I would have to say the Crown Burger was pretty good. It lived up to the hype. It was a very delicious burger. I really liked it. And the JCB burgers are pretty good, too. So I would have to honestly say out of those two, I haven't had an Astro Burger yet, I don't think, but out of those two, I would have to say that I actually like the Crown Burger the most. So the Crown Burger truly did live up to the hype, folks, I gotta say. And so, a big shout out and thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that addresses your question well. And I suppose I'll have to go get another Crown Burger here soon. And with that, we're on to the next one. Holy moly!
Oh my God, a $500 anonymous donation. What in the world is going on? This is crazy.
What the hell? A $500 donation? Shoot! I gotta say, whoever threw that in, it's an anonymous donation, so we actually don't know the name of who threw that in. But that is unbelievable. That is humongous. Humongous. Why'd you say that? Like, man, I always think of that meme whenever I say humongous. I think of that dude way back in the day when that Karen was like, "What's your name?" And he said, "My name is Humongous." Humongous what? Like, I always think of that meme. But that is an absolutely humongous donation. And I gotta say, a huge thanks to you so much for that donation to the fundraiser, because it is skyrocketing this thing on up towards $4,000 at this point. Absolutely insano. But with that, it is time for us, folks, to move on and into the, I think, second question of this segment.
Yes, and this one's going to go to Howard Turgell, who throws in a $20 support, a super chat, and thank you very much, Howard, as well, for that support. He said, great content, and thank you.
Hey, and thank you so much for enjoying our content and helping us to keep this thing running. We always don't get to cover the greatest of news. I'll say that the deaths of the 3 U.S. soldiers yesterday and the fact that it appears that ISIS is resurging today isn't really the greatest of news, but we are still honored and very appreciative to know that a lot of people always continue to consider this channel to be a very primary source of news in their lives, and a lot of people say that it's their only source of news these days. We're very honored for that, and we consider that in high regard whenever we come on here every night and do this news. And we've got to thank you massively for helping to support it and keep it possible, even in the midst of a Sunday night fundraiser, which historically we never were able to take super chats on, which means that we don't make a dime on Sundays most of the time at all. But nowadays they allow super chats, which has been going on for a while now, and we still thank everyone who does go over their way to support the channel, because while we're never supposed to make a cent on Sundays, I guess YouTube pretty much allows us to these days, and we really can't do anything about it. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that I've addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of our news.
And this one goes to Mark-Andre Burnett, who puts in a $5 super chat. And thank you very much, Mark, for that support as well. He said, long live the LOC, and Lee Spring Army will never die.
And the Lee Spring Army will never truly die. That is a phrase that will echo through the whole of history. Maybe one day we'll be able to get some LSA flags out there so that way we can see all the folks who are repping the LSA set with all of those beautiful white and gold flags with the blue background. That would be really cool to see. But I do have to say, humongous thanks to you so much for enjoying our news and coverage and helping us to make this thing possible. So, humongous thanks to you once again. I hope that I've addressed that well. And with that, folks, it is time for us to move on and into the rest of our news. And we're actually not going to be moving into Russia at the moment, folks. We're actually going to move you all down into Thailand and Cambodia, because considering the heaviness of the news that we were just covering a moment ago, you know, the worst terrorist group that's ever been seen in the face of humanity, possibly resurging again, I think that we do want to have a little bit of comedic relief, at least the best we can, with the kind of news that we cover. So we're going to be moving down to Thailand and Cambodia today, because I got to tell you, folks, I was cooking up the news today, and there is comedy abound to be had, because we got endless clips of the Cambodian army fighting in the war today, and there is nothing but comedy to be had. So moving us on down and into the border regions, the war is still going today. This is about 72 hours after the President of the United States stated that there was a ceasefire that both sides had agreed on that was going to be going into effect at the evening hour of that very day. 3 days later, the war is still going, and 3 days later, absolutely everybody in the area, Ibrahim in Malaysia, Hanat of Cambodia, and Charnavarakul of Thailand, have all made it incredibly clear there is not an existent ceasefire or one that's even been agreed on at this point. And the Thai have also made it clear they're not going to agree to any ceasefire, and they're going to keep this war going until they win. Moving us on into the border region, we did get to see today that the Cambodians tried to conduct what I could only call a Vietnam. They took a Dishka and tried to shoot down an F-16 with a Dishka heavy machine gun. This is what the Vietnamese did, by the way, during the Vietnam War against the US, usually with no success. But here's the clip. There he is, firing. And there's the F-16. I gotta be honest with y'all, I think he's missing.
I'm surprised that it didn't get him.
Honestly, man, I mean, you know, I'm quite surprised as well. But, you know, I don't know what the Cambodians think they're fighting in anymore, but this is not World War I where you can fire a heavy machine gun at a plane and take it down. This is the modern day and age. That doesn't really work too well. Moving on from that, and on out of that clip, we also saw that the Cambodians were having a little MLRS camp out in the middle of what appeared to be a temple in the Odar Manche province. Technically, this makes the temple a military target for the Thai to be hit and blown up, but I gotta say, folks, the Cambodians have not been playing the situation too well with this whole thing. Temples are protected areas, and now they're making the temples unprotected areas because armed forces are literally basing within them, which does make them a military target and completely voids the war crime that would be involved in striking and destroying a religious site. So, a little bit interesting with that. They don't really seem to be learning too well on that end. Meanwhile, the Thai Marines actually ended up taking ground today, from what we understand, in the Ban Sam Lang area in the Trat province after a major military operation was conducted in the area. We were able to see the clip here showing that they did secure this hill and had pushed the Cambodians off of it. So here's the clip. We hear the firefight as we watch the Thai Marines move up the hill towards the Cambodian positions, which have been shattered by barrages and airstrikes, with heavy firefighting still going on all around this position. We see the firefight still continuing as the squad communicates with each other. And we now see one of the Marines advancing into the open. And now running towards this flagpole over here, where a couple of Thai soldiers are now mounting the Thai flag and raising it in the literal middle of an active firefight. That is why, also, by the way, Matthew in the chat, the bass is too loud, man.
Yeah, that's loud.
I gotta say, man, I want everyone to get tinnitus. It's a part of the experience. It's a part of the battlefield to get tinnitus. I will lower it a little, but I always want to make sure, folks, that we give y'all the full breadth of what it actually sounds like on the battlefield. But when you see the Thai soldiers actually gathering around the flagpole, they've taken down the flag of Cambodia, and they're now going to be raising the flag of Thailand. Meanwhile, other Marines continue to run by them about a fire team-sized formation as they continue to push the fight to the Cambodians. We now see them raising the flagpole, which is getting stuck in a tree. And there's the flag of Thailand.
So this is on the Cambodian or the Thailand side this territory was taken?
This is right across the border. This hill existed on the other side of the border, with the base of the hill being on the Thai side. So the Thai Marines conducted an assault on the Cambodian positions on the hill on the other side of the border, advanced onto the hill, pushed the Cambodians off, and took the strategic height within this area. So now the Thai are generally going to have the battlefield advantage due to them having the high ground from this hill.
So this was Cambodian territory, right?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. So they're actually taking border towns. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, it actually is, and it is once again showing us, folks, this is a full-blown war at this point. Moving on from that clip, filmed by the Thai Marines, we also have been able to see additional footage further north that the Thai Air Force apparently hit the 513th Support Command Base of the Cambodian Army with an airstrike today.
ai vô phui đã không hấp ơ. Vô cùi mà bật tì nè. Cái bật tì thì hiên mà crop lư đó co mấy bán ấy nó rip trăm.
Is that standard issue right there? That guy walking out without a shirt?
Yeah, like yeah, it's fairly normal.
It's a standard issue right there. No shirt, but all the service. They got all the heat.
Man, you know, down there in Cambodia, man, they don't have the phrase "no shoes, no shirt, no service." They just say "service," and that's it. Very respectable. But moving on from that and towards the border, now it's time for us to really get into, folks, the real fighting that's been going on. We were able to see this Thai soldier laying down fire with an FN Mini-Me light machine gun on Cambodian positions earlier in the day. Pretty nice little setup they have here, mind you. Oh, and we're going to have to mute that. They're actually playing that trap. But we can see here that he picked up the Mini-Me. He's loading that thing up. And he's firing into the Cambodian positions. We can't play the audio in this clip, unfortunately, but we can see him now taking a little bit of a rest. And putting the safety on.
It's interesting. It's interesting to see these guys right here, which kind of have sort of very slim frames. Like they're not very, you know, like big guys. These fellas here, they're sort of like on the skinnier side, operating these very heavy, like high recoil machine guns. Like you can see this guy's really leaning into it. Like he's jumping up. He's like leaning his whole body into it to keep that recoil under control. If you go back and take a look, he's kind of like he's actually handling it pretty good for his size.
Man, honestly, I don't think the Mini-Me has a large cartridge, though. It's like a 5.56, I believe. So it's not that much recoil, but, you know, for a smaller frame person like him, it starts to get a little bit challenging to deal with. You could see he was having to put his body into handling the recoil. But moving on up, now it's time for us folks to get to Comedy Hour. It's time to watch the Cambodian army on the border, not the Thai army, because up until now we were pretty much watching the Thai army's actions against the Cambodians. Now it's time for us to watch the Cambodian actions up here in the real front line, which is at Buriram, Surin, and Sisaket, although pretty much the whole border is an active front line. Here is the Cambodians engaging the Thai. Ah, yes, the old Type 56. Some of y'all will call that an AK. That's actually, I believe, a Norinco Type 56, which is a license-built version of the AK that's made by the Chinese. Very common within Southeast Asia. Man, that spray and pray. Oh, it sounds a little hot out here.
I got the boilers turned on out here. Jeez.
Man, honestly. Also, we can see this guy is apparently a part of the West Side Crips. Very good to know. The Cambodians are repping their colors and sets. But also, we can see this guy wearing what appears to be a Pol Pot era helmet. This guy is also wearing a PAS GT Type 3 level ballistic protection helmet. We can also see what appears to be an M16 style grenade launcher underslung on this AK. That's really a treat. And this guy also seems to have a standard AK and then a pole. We can also see what appears to be a riot shield.
Very soft-spoken for a West Side Crip, this fellow is right here. He's very, very soft-spoken. He said, as you can see here, they have a little bit of a shield.
Also, why did they bring a riot shield into the middle of an active battlefield?
Hey, you never know when you're going to have a riot. You know, you never know.
Man, they're waiting for the riots when everyone loses their shit at the casinos. Like, they're going to be like, move back, move, man. Like, they're going to start doing that on their own men. Oh, man. Dude, you know what the idea is, man? They're like, oh, we got the greatest idea. What if we gather up all of our riot shields, right? And we wedge them, we shape them in a funnel, so that way when the Thai advance, they can't do anything but walk in the funnel straight into the open doors of our casinos and lose everything in there. Yeah, like that's what the Cambodians came up with as a strategy.
He said, clearly, this is going to work against the Thai.
Is that a halberd? Dude, this guy's got a medieval polearm out here.
What is it? Like, do you have a picture of it you can show?
Yes, I do. Let me, like, this is like the not really the fantasy version. I'm trying to find a realistic one of these, because these were actually used in combat for a large part of history. But this is a halberd, which is a polearm. Basically, it's a spear. It's a spear and hatchet, or more so an axe, a battle axe, 2-in-1 combo.
Interesting. I guess is that really what he had? I mean, I couldn't really tell. It's like a pole of some sort.
That looks like a blade on the top of that thing. They're getting medieval up here on their asses, man. They got shields and they got damn like pole arms. Wow. They got to show us that a little bit more, right, in this clip, please. I beg of you. That looks like what it was, man, because when like the little bits of clip, there's something on top of that pole and it's metal, like right there at the end. That looks like a blade. It literally looks like it is a halberd that someone has forged up there.
That could explain why they have the riot shields. They could be holding the riot shield with one hand, and they got the spear in the other hand, and that's their. That seems like a strange thing to take to a gunfight, but maybe that's what they're trying to do.
Oh, but a halberd like that, it can only be effectively wielded with two hands. Like, if you have a halberd, you don't have a shield. You could, like, shields are for, like, half swords and smaller weapons like that, battle axes, maces. But having a polearm like that requires two hands to wield that thing effectively. So they're not. So apparently some other guys have the shields. This guy's got the halberd. I don't know, but apparently, folks, we're actually looking at the Battle of Agincourt, apparently, circa 1415, up here in Cambodia. So interesting. And that's the end of that clip, but there was a little look at the Cambodians for you. We also got to see a Cambodian mortar team in action, and I gotta say, big shout out to this dude for carrying endless LMG belts when he's in a mortar team, considering that mortar teams very rarely ever have a light machine gun, considering that they operate the mortar as their heavy weapon, and it's a crew-served weapon too. So, like, just to tell y'all, most mortar teams in the world, and I believe the Cambodians are not an exception to this, would only have carbines or lighter rifles to use because the mortars are quite heavy. There's no real room to carry around a light machine gun in a mortar crew because you're already maxing out most of their weight-carrying abilities by just carrying the mortars and their ammo, along with their base plates, bipods, and everything else. So this guy has this full bandolier of MG ammo wrapped around him like Rambo, and he doesn't even have a light machine gun from what we know to use it with. So I have no clue why he's got it. I guess he just has it for aura. So here it goes. He hangs the round. He almost slung it down there, which is a big no-no. And there it goes. Oh,
you are not expendable, Rambo. Look at him go.
Man, look at him. He looked up like Tom and Jerry. He went, like, and then he fired. And then he looked back down. Oh, man.
That's right. Whoa. Go back down. Look back down at that. Look at the feet. Look at the feet. I'm not one of these people who's got something for feet, by the way. They got the Crocs, and they do not. I think they had them in sport mode. I think that's sport mode for Crocs, but that's not sport mode. They had them in comfort mode. That's wild, though. Crocs on the front lines. Also, is that condoms on the ground? Do you see that?
Hey, yo!
Bro,
man.
what the? Am I missing something?
I don't think it is. I think it's some sort of like a plastic sheath for the mortar rounds, I believe, because the rest of the stuff is like cradles for the mortars and stuff. So I think that's what it might be, is just debris from the packing for the mortar rounds. But I mean, you know, it's not that far off though from
that thing
like
on that thing on the left right there. I'm not so sure about that. Hey, but honestly, this place is trashy. Like, they are not keeping us up. Also, by the way, the Crocs in the war zone. Also, the other dude's wearing flip flops. This is pretty casual right here.
Yeah, bro. They had casual Sunday dress day in the Cambodian army today. Crocs and flip flops and everything else in between. But man, they got this thing in comfort mode here, because it's when you flip that little strap on the Crocs to the back to where it's wrapping around your heels. That's sport mode. This is comfort mode. This guy's having a casual Sunday here while they're firing mortar rounds at the Thai.
Crazy work, crazy. Honestly, they got Rambo, they got Crocs, they got possibly condoms. It's an interesting little scene they've got going here.
Also, I gotta ask, what woman in the right mind is going to follow a dude into a trench in an active front line in this situation for that to even be there? I got a lot of questions. Like, I got a lot of questions, and I don't know if we're ever going to get an answer to that. Here goes the next mortar round, handed with care. Man, I gotta say though, I really felt that one guy off in the distance over here. He was like, "Mang mang," like it really does. Like, oh, that's it. Listen. Also, this thing has quite a delay. I don't know if I don't know if the primer is working right, because you can hear this thing hit the base of the mortar, and then it takes it like a good second to go off. Listen. Boom, right there. It hit the base. And then it went off like about a half second later. It's like, I think those are like some fairly old or getting defective primers almost. Like, there might be a lot of duds coming out of this.
Hey.
But moving on from that clip and on into our next one further down the line, we also got to see the Cambodians firing a little bit more at the Thai positions. Let's watch this great example of an AK manual of arms and precise marksmanship provided to you by none other than the best equipped Cambodian soldier that we have seen so far in the war. He actually has a legitimate ballistics helmet and what appears to be a more modern uniform. That is actually a first in all of the clips we've ever seen. Let's see how he handles an AK. Ah, yes. The old stick it over the top and pray. Like, it's very, very effective. Oh, we have another man here doing the same thing. But he's actually looking over the top.
Like he's holding the AK like it's a bottle of detergent or something, like just some dish soap. Like the way he's spraying it, it's just like very odd. It's not very like confident. It's kind of like a little weak.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. If he's looking over the top like that with his face fully exposed, why doesn't he hold the rifle normally? He's holding it like he literally is a West Side Crip. Like, what's up with this? That's not gonna be effective at all.
Yeah, I would say.
And he has no recoil control over that thing either.
I don't think these guys are hitting a damn thing.
I think they're shooting well over their heads on the other side, man. The Thai are over there going, did you hear that? Like, it's just like the faintest, like 50 feet over their head. But moving on from that, we also were able to see another clip of the Cambodians on the front today. Take a look at this. Now, this was impressive. This guy's firing a machine gun, and he's not even looking over the berm. He's blind firing a machine gun.
Let's see this. Let's see it. Look at that. What the hell is he doing?
Oh, look, he's shooting an enemy aircraft. Bro, look
Wait a second. I was just talking about these skinny dudes trying to manage this recoil right here. This dude right here is the exact example of how a skinny dude cannot handle recoil. This dude is like, this dude's almost humping, like trying to keep this thing under control. Do you see him? Like, back this thing up a little bit. Look at him. He's down there doing like, he's breaking down moves. Look at this. He's busting it down.
Right, he's busting it down. Look at bro.
Look at him. Look at him. What the hell is he doing?
Oh, there we go. You're shooting at the enemy dive bombers right there. Oh my god.
This dude's an accident waiting to happen.
Now, here's the other part of the clip that we already saw a minute ago when they had the halberd and everything. So basically, it's like Comedy Central out here in the Cambodian trenches. But moving on from that clip and into our last one of the Cambodian army, we also got this clip of them firing at the Thai as well. This one's a bit lengthier. And so here you go. He's like, okay, is it filming? Is it filming? Okay, cool. So he whips out what appears to be the snow cone RPG variant. I'd never have seen this thing in my life. It's exceptionally rare, and it's a special shaped charge that can be used in the RPG-7. They basically don't exist, like nobody uses them, but this guy apparently went to an antique store and bought one and is using it. Also, got to give a big shout out that this RPG is in such bad shape. It does not appear to have the what would we call it? The exhaust muzzle brake for the back blast. It's just literally a straight tube. Big shout out to that. This man out here, he's firing off the pipe gun, basically. Here he goes. Oh, yeah. Oh my god!
What just happened?
Bro, look at him! Bro, he was like, nah, shoulder firing, this is for wussies. I'm gonna mount the barrel right on the top of my helmet on my head and then fire it.
Oh my god, let's see this.
Now he's like, yeah, I changed my mind. I'm gonna give it a minute, build up some courage.
Uh-oh.
Oh, he's getting back up there.
He's working up the courage.
Oh my God! The
God.
backblast
Oh
is
my
insane. Oh my God!
That is insane. If he'd have been a little bit lower, like with that angle, I think it would have, like, literally the backblast would have hit that trench wall behind him and probably blasted him.
It probably would have, man. I'm not gonna lie. It probably would have. Jeez Louise, folks. I'm not gonna lie. This is something else.
Oh,
Also, by the way, for
he's not acting right. He's acting like he's shook from that.
He is. Also, by the way, for all of our RPG aficionados out there, y'all are actually correct. This is, in fact, an RPG 2, which is extremely rare. Let me show y'all one of these. This is the RPG 2 right here. This came
that's
before.
a jank looking thing. It's like a potato launcher, like Chef Danny was just saying. It's like a jank looking, like, basic potato launcher. This is what $1 billion annual military budget gets you, is junk like this.
Bro, they got the dollar store RPG out here, man. Man, like, I gotta be honest with y'all, folks. As a matter of fact, I can't even really remember hearing about the RPG 2 before. From what I understand, was hardly ever used, if at all. So it's a little bit crazy to see one of these, because this is about the first time I've ever seen one myself. And I've looked at a great deal of the different types of grenade launchers or shaped charge launchers or anti-tank systems that they have had in the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact, and I have never seen one of these things, to be entirely honest with y'all. But anyways, this guy seems to be shaking. The pits of hell have opened up behind him, apparently. This sounds like one of the largest firefights we've heard in a minute. What are these? What are these?
It looks like a grenade on a pole with like a what is that? Like a fuse or something on top? Like with a chunk of coconut in between it.
Dude, it looks like a frag grenade with a chunk of banana or coconut that's been sliced into a round shape, and then topped with the head end of a carrot, like the top of a carrot, and they've cut off the leaves, and then most of the rest of the carrot, and then they glued that on top. I don't know what the hell this is, folks, but this is the wackest shaped charge I've ever seen. And
it's like the modern day version of what you'd call a boomstick. This thing right here, they got literally the booms on the end of the stick, and you can just sort of like yeet it out in the distance, and it does what it has to do.
Man, he already fired off one of these things. Dude, I legitimately think that a museum in the United States would probably be dying to have one of these, because I've just never seen this before. Oh, he's putting it over the top.
God.
Oh my God.
Oh crap. Oh no.
Oh!
Oh my God. Look at that backblast. That is crazy. Man, I promise you, if he angled that thing up and that backblast was going down toward that trench wall, this guy would be finished. Like that, this guy does not know how close he is to, like, actually in deep trouble.
Dude. The fact that it did that when it fired, that is unreal. Like, this thing...
That is crazy.
I gotta be honest with you, folks. RPG 7 backblast is nothing too bad as long as you're not directly behind it. He doesn't do this. The RPG 2 has backblast so strong that they probably would have to, if they wanted to be safe with it, they probably have to take this thing to Cape Canaveral and put it on a launch pad facing vertical for the backblast to be properly managed. That is an insane amount of backblast. Just look at this. I mean, that is nuts. That is crazy. But anyways... That is what the current frontline situation looks like in Thailand and Cambodia. And I hope that y'all enjoyed that, folks, because I did want to get y'all your comedic relief segment in for the night, and that's the comedic relief. Moving on out of the Thailand-Cambodia war, which the Thai clearly have the advantage in, I think after looking at the Cambodian army, I think that's removing the doubt from most people's heads that this was a fair fight. The Thai are clearly going to be on the winning side of this. Moving on out of Thailand and Cambodia, we are going to be moving our way back towards the Caribbean, but dropping through the Middle East for just a moment. We were able to hear that apparently the board of terrorist shareholders will be gathering together to possibly remove Hezbollah leader Naim Qasim, because apparently he's not living up to their vision. They apparently had a shareholder meeting in Iran today. They said, okay, it's the evil terrorist shareholder meeting. We need to gather around and talk about Naim Qasim. What is y'all's complaints against him? He isn't living up to our mission statement. He isn't promoting our stocks. He isn't doing enough to terrorize people. So they're considering removing him, actually. So that's something interesting. I didn't know that they had basically a terrorist shareholder meeting. And also at Shafrud, they also apparently are conducting mass productions of missiles, with a lot of the boosters just dropped off in a dirt parking lot and just left there, apparently, after they're made. We understand that they're either trying to sell these to the Russians, or they're developing these for themselves to prepare to go to war with Israel for a second time. We don't know which.
That's good. The last report we had heard from intelligence sources was they were actually developing these for their own personal use because they're trying to test I guess you could say, the best method to fire the rocket. So that way they can have a delivery method for the nuke they're trying to develop. So that was the last report we got on it. But they could be trying to sell them too, because obviously they need money. So maybe they're trying to sell them, but I think they're trying to develop their own homegrown missiles.
I think so. That's definitely for sure at this point. It appears the production is quite high. Moving on down into Israel, we also were able to hear that the U.S. is looking at trying to create a peacekeeping force of 10,000 troops to go into Gaza and stabilize it. So, that's a development that's ongoing at the moment. So now, folks, it's time for us to shoot on across the sea to the Caribbean. It's time, folks, for the favorite titled segment that we have on the channel, The Hunt for Captain Crack Sparrow and his band of 40 thieves. We were able to hear additional developments today. One, there was almost a collision today at 34,000 feet with JetBlue Flight 1112, or JetBlue Flight 1112, as an Airbus A320, which had departed from Curacao, bound for JFK in New York City, nearly collided Friday with the U.S. Air Force KC-135R aerial refueling tanker that did not have its transponder on at 34,000 feet over the southern Caribbean on Friday, while the tanker was carrying out operations off the coast of Venezuela as a part of Operation Southern Spear. So it actually appears that there's a lot of aircraft, as we obviously know, that are active within the Eastern Caribbean with their transponders off, and that's also apparently going to be causing very dangerous situations in the skies for American aircraft that are still trying to transit the area, because they might get into a mid-air collision with one of our aircraft operating in the area. Seems to me at this point, folks, that maybe we need to issue a NOTAM for the whole area, considering that we have such large amounts of military flights going on. There's the possibility that one of our civilian aviation aircraft could collide with a tanker and end up killing the people on board both aircraft. That doesn't really sound like a safe sort of a situation to me, but what do I know? I'm not the Secretary of War who conducts war. Make sure to like and subscribe. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on from that, and we also were able to see that there was an AV-8B that was flying around on Flight Radar 24 earlier today from the United States Marine Corps. So very nice to see that. That's one of the first times we've actually seen a Harrier on transponder within the Caribbean, so that was kind of unique. We also were able to hear up near the area of Puerto Rico in Roosevelt Roads that the Jolly Green Giant has arrived. The 3 HH-60Ws of Jolly Green 2, who are combat rescue helicopters involved in the U.S. Air Force's 33rd Air Rescue Squadron based out of Kendena Air Base in Japan, was seen on the tarmac at Roosevelt Roads. The fact that these are being brought in does suggest that eventually we're going to strike Venezuela, because considering that they are combat rescue helicopters, these helicopters are specially designed, and their mission for their squadron is specially designed to be able to pluck pilots and aviators out of the water or out of land in special infiltration operations if they were shot down, if it's possible. So the fact that these are being brought in does give a decent likelihood that strikes will commence against Venezuela, and we're expecting that there may be some Venezuelan ground fire involved in return fire, and that may lead to the loss of a U.S. aircraft and also the stranding of a U.S. pilot either at sea or on land in Venezuela that will require these helicopters to go in and try and either pluck them out of the water or get them out of Venezuela by flying into Venezuela in the midst of the active fighting. So very interesting to see that. And it does appear that this is still making it a little bit more likely that strikes will be coming at some point. We also were able to hear out of Venezuela today. Well, not really out of Venezuela. It's technically out of Norway, but we're saying that it's in Venezuela because it has to deal with the opposition leader. The opposition leader stated today that Maduro was the one who declared war on the Venezuelan people, and we didn't want a war, and we were suffering hundreds of thousands of killings and forced executions within the country, according to the Venezuelan opposition leader. So it appears that the Venezuelan opposition leader is all into the idea that they are at war with the greater world and generally the United States, and that they eventually want to remove the Maduro regime from power. So generally giving us a little bit of a window, or at least an idea that there is going to be a war eventually happening with Venezuela, but when, we can't say. That would be completely impossible to even know at this point, because we've been hearing that strikes are coming very soon for 3.5 months, almost 4 now. And, you know, once you hear that strikes are coming very soon for 4 months straight, you generally start to say strikes might not ever be coming, or they might still be far away. Give it another 2 weeks, and we'll revisit the topic. Moving on up into Washington, however, we also were able to hear that there was reprisals vowed against ISIS today, which we already covered earlier in the stream, but we just want to make sure that we're circling back over everything in the Americas and covering it thoroughly. So, now, folks, it's time for us to move on into Ukraine and the war that's going on, or это война, это Украины Российской Федерации. So we're going to be getting on into all of the details that's coming out of the Ukraine war over the course of the day. Moving us on into Europe first, we were able to hear that another meeting was held today between Zelensky and Witkoff. Apparently they talked about all kinds of developments. The U.S. is saying that Ukraine's lost the war, although they just took Kupiansk, the entire city, yesterday. So apparently Ukraine can win on the front lines, a major strategic victory, and we just ignore it, apparently. So, great on Witkoff. He apparently is very well in tune with what the frontline situation looks like. Beyond that, we don't really know a lot of the additional details that were talked about. There were rumors that came out about the meeting and what was being said from different people who were involved, and it does appear that generally the U.S. has a very negative outlook on the Ukrainian situation in the war, and they believe that the Ukrainians are actually losing the war and have no chance at standing any longer than the next week. So the U.S. has actually subscribed to Ukraine has fought this war and has survived the war for 4 straight years, but for some reason they're now going to lose the war within the next 3 days, which is what everyone thought before the war started. I don't know why that's the case, but, you know, it is what it is. We can also see this guy right here, you know, it has no affiliation with anyone in the U.S. government or the office of the presidency, of course, God forbid. But moving on from that and on into Finland, we also were able to hear that the Finns are working on them defenses. Next week, a group of European Union countries closest to Russia will start working on concrete measures for how to boost the bloc's defenses against their belligerent eastern neighbor, according to the Finnish Prime Minister Orpo. Orpo said the Eastern Flank Summit he is convening in Helsinki on Tuesday aims to agree on cooperation in building up defenses and a common stance within the European Union for the group. Partaking in the meeting are the leaders of Sweden, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, and Bulgaria. And Germany is also jumping into this as well today by also stating that they are still preparing for a war that will eventually come with Russia, as it's apparently a high likelihood, according to all of their intelligence in Europe, that the war isn't going to stay in Ukraine. It is most likely going to expand to Europe. So, we are waiting to see what will be coming out of those meetings, and we're of course going to be seeing what all of y'all are thinking about that defensive stance at the moment and the preparations for eventual war. Moving on from that, it's now time for us to move on down into the Black Sea, and we have a lot of news to cover down here. Y'all remember the Virat? Y'all remember that vessel, the Virat? Let me go pull up a picture of the Virat for all of y'all. The Virat ship.
That's a very beautiful name, by the way. I've never heard such a beautiful name like that. Like, compliments to who picked that name out. Virat. It just sounds like something so, like, it sounds like something the Mona Lisa would be named after, something like that. The Virat.
Man, it really does. The Virat, man. Man, it's a vine rat. That's the Virat right there. It's a good ship, the Virat. Or should I say, it's a bad ship. It's a Russian ship. Isn't that so interesting? You know, we said that it was an alleged Russian shadow tanker for the longest time because it was flagged out of a different country, out of Cameroon of all places. But
Gambia.
I think it was Gambia. I think it was the other one, actually, the Kairos that was out of Cameroon. It was one of them. But anyways, apparently, folks, the Virat's being towed back to Turkey for repairs. You can see it being towed right here, damage clearly visible. But you know, what's very interesting is that while it's being towed, it's had a change of name from its very own name to its own nationality. It's apparently now Russian. Would you believe it? It's now a Russian tanker, and it's also had its name changed to the Prometi. Could you have made it more clear that this was a Russian shadow tanker than by changing the nationality of the ship to Russia after the attack was conducted, and also changing the name to a Russian name for the ship? Could they have made that any more obvious at this point? So, I gotta say, folks, you know, those shadow tanker claims are apparently solid stuff, because after this ship got attacked, they completely dropped the pretense that it wasn't even a Russian tanker, and now it's just straight on a Russian ship. It's the Prometi, which is flagged out of the Russian Federation. That's crazy. I mean, that is absolutely nuts, folks, to see and hear about something like that. So, now we're going to be moving on into Russia, because the Ukrainians, of course, had to punish the Russians greatly for this action, as it is a heinous sin to change the name of your ship in the middle of the sea, and also change the flag and nationality that it comes from, because who in the hell would ever do something like that? That's like something out of a movie that Nicolas Cage may or may not have been in, that had to deal with an arms smuggler that we traded for a basketball player a couple of years ago. But moving us on up into Moscow, the Ukrainians have punished the Russians quite greatly for this transgression. We do understand that there were explosions happening all around Moscow tonight. Witness. Oh. I gotta say, I don't know what it is with that, like, greenish haze that's in the clouds in Russia, but it makes the whole place look like it's a toxic hellscape, you know?
It kind of is a toxic hellscape, honestly, like if you really think about it.
Man, like, respectfully. Here's another clip. Oh, listen to that. Here's another clip. Oh, that's where the orangish, greenish glow was coming from in the clouds. It was coming from that giant explosion off in the distance. I wonder what was hitting Moscow, folks, to create an explosion like that. It's a mystery. Well, what else do we have here?
О, чекай нахуй, просто въебало, блядь.
This guy sounds plastic.
блядь.
Oh, man, this guy was... It's a bloody player. Man, it's like, bro, this guy's been in the soup. That alcohol tax is draining his wallet a little bit quicker, but draining it nonetheless. We also were able to see more footage that came out of the Moscow area of the drone that entered the Moscow area. Take a little bit of a look.
Начать запись аварийного видео.
Atibant is Rubino. Man, you gotta say right there that that's something else. We can also see a little firing of a Russian missile right here over the buildings. But we can also see here
Охуеть, прям рядом с нами.
these Russians
Мы
having the
стоим
blast.
еще, вот он след. Ракета как въебла. Просто вот, блядь, ебаная хуйня, сука. Вот он, она просто отсюда вылетела метр 40, на.
Sounds disturbed. Oh my god.
Охуеть.
They're going crazy. Like you return and they're going crazy here. Hello?
Yeah, what?
Oh,
Play the video.
Yeah, well, you sound like you're about to go into a monologue there for a second. I like paused the video. I like did a little like segue so that you could talk about what you wanted to talk about there. But okay, we'll just play the video.
Вот он, она просто отсюда вылетела метр 40, на. Охуеть.
These guys have gotten in the sauce as well.
Ох.
But But that's the end of that clip right there. And moving on from that, it does appear that the city of Moscow came under quite a significant attack tonight. From what we understand, it involved missiles and drones. Some of them made it through, as y'all could tell, some of them didn't. So we'll generally be waiting to see what's going on out there, but I think that we'll probably not be able to get any good eyewitness reports from the Russians, because if you ask them, hey, what went on in your neighborhood today? They'll go, hit the brownie, it's sucky, bleh. You know, okay, he's plastered. He probably didn't know what the hell he even had for breakfast yesterday. But let's get on into a little bit of Russian governmental news, because while Moscow was getting plastered, like a nice model, we were able to see, and I mean like a model like diorama, not the other way, like that before. Like, I just realized how that could come out with two different meanings. I did not mean the other way. Hey, yo! But moving on from that, we also were able to see the Russian statements made today by Ushakov. Moscow will strongly object if proposals developed by Kyiv and Brussels are included in a peace plan to resolve the conflict. So basically, nobody gets a say in how the peace deal works. It's just, you accept the Russians' demands, or you don't. Now that's something else right there. That sounds like practical unconditional surrender to me. You can't even have any conditions to your own surrender. You just have to accept the demands, and our demands is what they is. They is what they is, I tell you. So it does appear that, these peace talks are really going nowhere. And it appears that Zelensky said that as well, because he said in the capital today, in the capital of Germany, I mean, because he hadn't made it back to Ukraine yet, that in case of a failure of the peace process, we'll have to pull ourselves together and find another way, and once again do everything possible to end the war. So generally it appears that Zelensky's losing a lot of confidence in these absolute shams of a peace talk. And Matthew, what are people thinking about these peace talks, and why the hell is still even going on? Are they thinking it's just to appease some guy so that way he can think that he gets a chance at winning the Nobel next year? Or are they thinking something else entirely? And what are you thinking as well?
All right. So right now, the peace talks are a huge waste of time. The Ukrainians are meeting with the United States officials, and the U.S. officials are saying, we want a deal. And Zelensky's saying, we're not giving up territory. So it's a dead end on that front right there. And then on the Russian side of things, they're over there saying, we'll agree to a peace deal, but only if it's only what we want. That's our type of peace deal. So obviously that's a dead end too. And then you have some European leaders out there yelling and screaming, talking about, we're closer to a peace deal today than we've ever been. It's like, what are you, delusional? It's like, I don't know where these people are making up these statements from. But the peace talks are a dead end all the way around, pretty much at every angle. So 70% said peace talks are only to appease the United States, while 15% said peace talks are to frame Russia, and 7% said it seems like Ukraine wants peace. So Ukraine wants peace, but they want peace in the way it makes sense for Ukraine. That's as simple as it gets. And nothing on the table right now makes sense for Ukraine. So the only way it's going to make sense is if Russia gets the hell out of Ukraine, and the only way that's going to happen is if Putin's regime collapses, or the Russian government collapses, or the economy collapses. So until one of those things happens, peace talks are a waste. They got to keep fighting. So the only thing the West can really do to ensure peace is to give Ukraine what it needs to fight. That's pretty much it. So I would say the peace talks are only to appease the United States. Ukraine was not engaging in these talks until the United States came along and started meddling in their affairs. And until then, they weren't happening because it wasn't necessary and it wasn't going to go anywhere. So I'm with the 70%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd agree with 70% as well. This is clearly to appease the United States. It's absolutely stupid and ridiculous that this has gone on for a full calendar year and that it's still going on. You would think that someone within the Oval Office would start to understand that there's no way to get a peace with the Russians. You would think they'd start to understand there's really no way to get peace anywhere. Because think about it, folks. Really think about it here. Let's put our little brain cells together and click them together to come up with some rational conclusions based off of the information that we have been provided. Israel hates Hamas. Hamas hates Israel. Hamas is a terrorist group, and they can't be trusted on their word, so a peace deal between those two isn't going to exist because the Israelis are just going to keep going on killing these Hamas people because they hate them, and Hamas is going to keep going on killing the Israeli people because they hate them too. And so then on top of that, you also got to consider that they're terrorists and they can't really be trusted on their word. So a peace treaty is not really going to stop that whole thing just on that point alone, and they also hate each other. So clearly, trying to get a peace deal there doesn't really work. So we just support one side or the other, and we clearly support the Israelis in that fight. If you look at another situation like Thailand and Cambodia, clearly can't end the war there. The Thai are literally telling us that flat out these days. So all we can do is we can kind of get involved if we want to, and we can kind of steer who wins by giving them weapons, lots of weapons for free. So we can kind of steer how the war goes, but we can't necessarily end the war. And then that's the same thing with Ukraine. You know, just like Thailand and Cambodia and Israel and Hamas or Israel and Iran or every other conflict on the globe, the Russians don't want a peace, and the Ukrainians aren't willing to give up unconditionally to end the war. So clearly there's no end to the war right now, so the only thing we can do is change how it goes. So we can give the Ukrainians some weapons, and we can steer the outcome of the conflict. If something else happens as a result of that, that's unfortunate, but that's the situation that we're working with. There's only one way that you can work these sorts of equations, folks, on foreign policy. If peace can't easily be achieved, then all you can do is just back a dog in the fight and support that dog and hope that it wins. That's all you can do. Otherwise, it's all out of our hands. It's out of our control. Look, we might be the United States, folks, but that doesn't mean that we're like some sort of a omnipotent, godlike power that runs the world at our whole fingertips. That's just a statement that we say in America because we're proud of our country. But in reality, folks, we're like any other country on the planet. We're the strongest one on the block, but we only have so much power in being able to change the outcome of events around the world or stop things to start things. We can start everything, but it's hard to end anything. That's just the truth of it. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion, because I just don't really know why in the world we're still stuck in this concept that this is like a business deal, and a business deal has to be made when this isn't business, this is war, and this is national foreign policy, which works in a totally different way. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and it's time for us to move on back into Russia. We were able to see up in the area of Ivanovo that we finally got some footage of that Russian Antonov 22, that crash the other day. This is a Russian Antonov 22, by the way. Some of y'all might know this from video games that you've played in the past. For some reason, I remember that this was in a video game that we played, Matthew, you and me. I don't know what game that was or why, but it was there. Anyways, it appears that this was the only one that they had left, and it had crashed outside of Ivanovo. We heard about this several days ago, but we finally got footage now. Let's take a look. Ah, yes, the back fell off.
Oh, wow. Usually it's the front, but this time it was the back.
You know, why in the world did the plane fall? Well, clearly it fell because the back fell off. Well, does that normally happen? No, usually planes are designed where the back doesn't fall off. But this one did. Yes, but it was not a normal design. Well, why would you say that? Well, clearly the back fell off. But beyond that, the back fell off. Literally, just taking off. The back fell off. We don't know what caused that. The only thing I can come up with, folks, if we're talking about a direct action, is a pretty heavy tail strike that apparently weakened the structural integrity of the fuselage, and it eventually sheared the back off of the Antonov. That's the only thing I can come up with, or a complete lapse of maintenance and repairs in this aircraft, and stress fracturing eventually formed that led to this critical failure right after takeoff.
It's a bad situation there. It's a big plane going down. It looks like it might have missed the neighborhood, I think. Hopefully it did. Yeah, it looks like it did.
Oh, yeah, it landed in a field, luckily for everyone. But, yeah, there's the back falling off and some pieces of the aircraft. I mean, that's
crazy. Is this
crazy.
like the second or third time this has happened with this plane or something? I've heard of another one, but I can't recall it.
Let me go pull up the Antonov 22 and crashes.
I think there was another one that just crashed like a week or two ago.
Oh, geez. Well, there was another one that crashed. I don't think it was an Antonov 22 because this was actually a fairly rare airframe. They didn't have a lot of these, and I think this was the last one that they had in service. Because only 68 of these were built, and they were all built from 1966 to 1976, so not really a lot of them are left in service. But let me see if I can find something here on the operational history. Let's see. Any crashes? Doesn't really appear. Yeah, it just doesn't really appear that there's a lot of information on the crashes, and the Soviets, of course, buried a lot of it, if there was any, so it'd be really hard to find it, but oh, here we are. So in 1970, there was one transporting humanitarian aid to Lima, Peru, and it lost radar contact after takeoff 47 minutes later, and nobody really knows what happened because the Soviet Union didn't investigate it. And then in 2010, the Russian Air Force had another crash, and it appears that the aircraft had been in storage since 2001 and was brought back into flying condition in January of 2010, and then it had a crash just later that year. So that's not shocking. And then there was the one that happened just recently where the tail fell off. And also, what's crazy is that you wouldn't believe this, Matthew. This aircraft had also been pulled back out of mothballing and into service. And this aircraft was returning from a test flight that went from Migalovo Air Base to Ivanovo Air Base and then back. And when it took off on the return trip on the test to see if the aircraft was airworthy, it became incredibly clear it wasn't airworthy as the back fell off.
Yeah, that's a damn shame right there to lose a whole nother cargo aircraft. That's a shame.
That really is a shame. So, folks, we can finally get the answer here. The thing had been mothballed for about 20 years and then pulled out of a hangar, and they expected it to be just fine. So, clearly it wasn't.
Wait. I know what I'm thinking about, by the way. When I said there was another one that went down, there was a Russian cargo plane. I can't remember if it was the exact same type as this, but there was another one that got shot down over Sudan just a week or two ago. So that wasn't a mechanical issue. It was a shooting down by the Sudanese forces, or one of those factions in the country. So Russia's been losing a lot of cargo planes. I've said it before. It might be safer for Russia to stay at home in their home country instead of going around and shipping and transporting weapons to people. It seems to be very unfortunate and dangerous.
Man, you know, the Russians sat there, man, they said, damn, we need a transport aircraft. Is this Antonov 22 safe? I don't know. No. Like, that's okay. Well, we're at square one again. It's like, man, that's honestly kind of rough. They're testing it to see if it's even in flying condition, and they got a clear answer. So, moving on from that, and on out of that bit of news at Ivanovo, we also got to see, down near the border, that there was another drone attack that happened again tonight over most of the western area of the Russian Federation. Meanwhile, down near Iryapinsk, we also got to see that the Ukrainians were burning on up that oil depot. It's still on fire, even today.
Something in a cafeteria or something. Like they're going to get served some Swedish meatballs.
Man, I gotta say right there. Oh, man, I gotta say. And also, on top of that, down in Astrakhan, we also got to see some explosions down here.
Oh.
That thing kind of like got dubbed in right there, man. He just went, like, listen to that. There was no audio at the start.
This Stuka.
Stuka! Here comes the explosion any second now. Oh, no, it's just the dubbing in of the drone coming over.
We literally got no explosion or anything out of that. Just a dubbed in buzzing noise.
But moving on under Rostov-na-Donu, we also get to see Rostov was attacked as well last night. There's a fire right near to the river, the Azov River, if I'm not mistaken.
It turns on that is not Rostov-on-Don. It's Don on Rostov. It looks like it's getting hammered.
Don, you have to understand, Don, it happens, Don. It is, Don, what it is, Don. But here's the clip of the air defense fire over Rostov-na-Donu. Wow. It's like a fireworks show out here. All right, here goes another little burst.
Is that part of the Christmas celebration?
Oh yeah, this is a part of Christmas around here.
It's the fireworks show.
Man, this is Father Frost's PTSD-inducing fireworks show.
This is the fight against Krampus, 2025.
Man, I gotta say, I do like those proxy bursting shells, though. They do look quite impressive.
Do you remember that whole thing where it's like, you know how NORAD like tracks Santa Claus when he's going around the world and stuff like that? Like they track him out through the airspace.
Yeah.
There was that thing going around, like people were saying, oh, you know, if the Santa Claus goes over the Russian country or the airspace or whatever, then they'll try to shoot him down. It looks like it's coming to fruition. It looks like they're firing at something on Christmas. I didn't hear any drone in the distance, so I think that might have been Krampus or Santa Claus.
It could have been. We did get to see a Ukrainian drone did get shot down over the city right there.
That was Krampus.
Blah, 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 blah. And we also got to see, here in this clip, the air defense fire again. And then we also got to see that fire again. Just making sure that we're covering all of our sources here. And then finally, we got one more clip of the air defense. Just more so clips, pictures, really. But still showing us some air defense. Moving on out of Rostov. We also were able to see down in Crimea today that the oil depots in hurriedly were hit by a Ukrainian drone attack and are on fire.
базу, ёбаный в рот, ебал. Я хуею, сука.
Oh yeah, well, look, it looks like they're getting oiled up down there. Oh wait, hold on, pause. Yo,
Хорошо не в нас.
Man, I get to say.
they busted the oil pipe and it oiled the place up. No diddy.
Man, bro, dude, they're sitting here on this balcony going, wow, look at all that oil spilling out. That whole place is getting lubed up. And then they hear in the distance, ain't nothing like a diddy party. No! It's like damn, like, it's like the Ghost of Christmas Future or something like that. But moving on from that, we also got to see up at the Zhankoi, the Ukrainians working on some derailments. They actually ended up striking a moving train. You could see it right here. And it's a fuel train. Man, I gotta tell you, the Ukrainians are starting to become rail fans these days, the way they're getting the schedules memorized to be able to hit these fuel trains consistently.
All railroaders, because they're out here railroading those Russians on a rail.
Man, that sounds like a food, Russians on a rail.
It could, yeah.
Oh, man. Russians on a rail. It's time to go harass federal agents again because I don't have a life. Oh, man. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Man, that guy's whole living, man, is just going around harassing whoever he can get his hands on the easiest.
Oh, man, it must suck to suck.
Aw, man. No wonder I don't have any friends. Aw, man. Also, by the way,
a friend.
But you know, I take romps in the woods, and I guess you could say that my favorite song is "You Got a Friend in Me," and I mean literally.
He said, "Aw, man, my best friend is a 24-pack of Costco Glizzies. Aw, man."
And a whole lot. I'm not even gonna go. But anyways, I saw Marie Jacobs say, "Not a train. The enforcer will not be happy about that." Honestly, I don't like Russian trains, quite truly, and also it's a strategic target, so it's got to get hit. Aw, man, I like how people put in the fly emoji for that. Like that's been associated with the fly from Alan the Marmot. But anyways. Moving on from that all and on into Belgorod, we also got to see that the thermal power plant at Belgorod has been hit again overnight. Oh, listen to that. Oh, dude, that was the quickest explosion I've ever seen, dude. It was like an explosion that had a timer on it. Watch this. Boop. And it's over. It's like, dang.
Why does this look like a what the?
I think that
Why
was
does it look like a Wild West town or something like that? It's like what they have the gunfight, the OK Corral over there on the left. Like what is this architecture?
Man, this is that architecture that makes you say, "Damn, it's good to be a Russian." Burning, this town ain't big enough for the two of us.
What is that, like an old style Western hotel like in front, and then like an old like stable? That might be your Lavrov's summer home over there on the left.
Lavrov goes in there. We will continue the war until we win. Oh, he's freaking out. Calm him down with a sugar cube.
Gotta give him a salt lick out.
Man. Bruh, you know, wherever Lavrov lives, they call that damn thing Salt Lake City. But moving on from that, we also got this clip here. Man.
Oh, look at that. A little plasma explosion.
Oh. Had a special sound to it. We also get to see in this clip another little explosion in Belgorod, boy. Take a look. Bam! There it was.
I remember when these sirens used to go out. I was a young child. It was bad times.
Damn.
Still gives me PTSD when I hear these sirens right here. I remember it wouldn't be the Russians or the Ruskies or the Ukrainians or anything you have to worry about. It would be a large spiraling course of wind coming through that was very, very destructive.
A tornado, boy. Like it, there were lots of them when we were growing up. But moving on from that and on into Ukraine. It's time for us to get on into the frontline news. And moving on down into the front lines, we're getting to our location unknowns. We were able to see the Ukrainians blow up a Tunguska. I've never seen this unit before, so unfortunately I don't know where to put them on the map. It is a unit of the Ukrainian Marines, that we do know, but they did blow up a Tunguska today. Very rare, mind you all. And it is gone, bled. Oh, bled! It is gone. Man,
What it says there at the top, not for something. What does that say?
Not for a public display. Huh.
Oh, well, it looks like somebody broke the rules.
Damn, that's unfortunate. But beyond that, we're
Look
seeing
at that big
it.
mouth over there on the right. Look at that.
Man,
Venom. Oh, that's not a mouth. That's a demon.
isn't that thing from that movie?
I don't know about that movie. I've never seen anything like that.
Oh, well, I mean, it says destroyed right next to it, so apparently they killed the demon. And also up here it says, restore justice and judge by deeds. Man, that's like
Okay,
quite
that's
philosophical to
very
have on a patch.
Very noble. Chill out, guys. You're the drone destroying brigade.
Also-
Don't get too philosophical on us.
Also, why does this raven/crow have a set of fine teeth right there, man? It's like gritting its teeth. It's going, like, it's like, yo, whoa, that's a bird. It doesn't have teeth. It's like, what the hell? Well, they got the
That's a bird with
Tunguska, though.
teeth. Oh, look,
Oh.
here's the bird. Look
Man,
at
see
it.
right there, it's got the teeth. It's like, calm down, birdie.
Also, everybody's saying that's a venom.
Venom.
Walter said that's venom. Venom.
1 second, let me go.
What is
pull
it?
It's the Venom movie, Matthew. It's the Venom movie. It's the
The
Venom,
Venom
creature.
movie.
Yeah, it's the Venom creature from the movie. I've never seen the movie, but
Oh,
I
they're
know
talking about
this-
that. They're talking about Spider-Man the movie. I haven't watched these movies, Spider-Man movies, by the way, so I haven't seen this thing.
This ain't a Spider-Man movie. This is a standalone.
Oh, it says he never fought Spider-Man. Oh, I don't follow these movies right here. I mean, I get they're probably good, but I just don't have time to watch them.
I don't either, but it's pop culture. It was in the memes, Matthew, back in the day. It was a big thing. But moving on from that, we also got the Russian casualty report. And the casualty report looking a little juicy today. Not the greatest day that we've seen recently, but still somewhat juicy. Mr. East Keeper of the Record stated that 440 drones is the 22nd highest loss. 710 is the lowest since 710 on April 17th of 2024. More recent low on October 17, 2025 was 730. Just over 100 days in the 700 to 999 range during these past 20 months. And that is quite interesting to hear. And over the past 24 hours, we were able to see that 710 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 7 APCs, 81 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, 9 artillery pieces, 444 drones, 440 drones, 13 cruise missiles, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. Very nice to see. Moving us on into the active front line, near to the area of Kupiansk, we were able to hear that the Russians claimed that they still control the whole of Kupiansk city. That was according to Alexander Kot, who is a military blogger in the Russian Federation. He claims they still own the city. The city is controlled by the Russian army, and this is a fact. Well, I hope he tells that to the besieged Russians that are still left inside the city, because I hear that they're getting, their asses beat right now by the Ukrainians. So I don't really think that that's true at the moment. Also, by the way, if you thought it was bad, apparently all the Russians that escaped from the city of Kupiansk when it got encircled and the Russian forces in there got destroyed yesterday, apparently they're dying from soup. They're dying of soup. Can you believe it, Matthew? Dying of soup.
Let's hear more. Let's hear more.
The soup was old, and they all got food poisoning. Right now.
Oh, wow. These guys got really effed up by that. This guy right there has got like tape on his head and stuff. He's on that cot right there. How the hell is that guy got that? Wait a minute. This guy's in the hospital right here with his tape on his head over his soup.
No, this guy's got combat wounds. This guy over here without the bandages. This is the guy who ate the soup.
I was about to say, what the soup do? Get up and grow legs and start beating them or something? It's like, how do you get tape on your head over some soup?
I mean, that soup, man, it can mess you up. But outside of that,
it's like, it's like those Tums commercials. You know how the food gets up and starts slapping people in the face and stuff like that in those Tums commercials? You got to make sure you take your antacid. Make sure you don't get a little bit of that upheaval in the stomach, whatever they call it.
But, folks, outside of that, explain to y'all how this happened. The soup was tainted, or it was poisoned, or something along those lines, because 12 Russian soldiers have died after eating this soup. So It is one hell of a soup. It's a biological weapon. And we're going to be muting that. That guy sounds quite annoying. But there is the soup. And also, there's some of it. So I think you can kind of tell that went off a while ago. Do you see a Russian?
Oh, he's foul. He's foul. Oh my God, that guy looks almost comatose right there. That soup put him in a bad way. Oh my God, wait a minute. Hold on. You was telling me they was eating this. What the hell's wrong with them? Were they blind?
That was the meat that was put in the soup.
Holy moly. What are they, blind or something? I mean, you have to be legally blind not to see that that's messed up. I mean, it's not like it's barely off. That's bad.
But Matthew, it's soup.
What's this paper say? Eat this unriskably, I'm not responsible for injury.
Let's see, what does this say? Oh man. I can't actually read Russian well enough, folks, to tell y'all. But you know, basically, things ain't going well within the 15th Separate Motorized Rifle Battalion, which is one of the battalions that escaped the encirclement at Kupiansk. Meanwhile, we also got to see the 45th Artillery Brigade in the area taking out some Russian artillery. And when I mean Russian artillery, it's North Korean Type 75s, because they're about down to that being the only thing left.
I'll tell you what, the Russians never cease to amaze me, like with the stupidity of the conscripts and the soldiers. It's like, you know, if your soldiers don't know how to look at some food and tell that it's clearly off and not to eat it, it's like, it's obviously better to go hungry than to eat the off food. You're going to get so sick, you're going to be in a worse way than otherwise. So it's just crazy, like the stupidity that runs rampant over there.
We've actually been able to hear, folks, that President Zelensky has awarded the Order of Ukraine to the soup for taking out 12 Russian soldiers in a valorous effort in the mess hall. Meanwhile, we also saw something pretty cool near Kyiv. Matthew, have you ever seen a self-propelled anti-aircraft gun disassemble a Shahed on film?
I have. I saw it today, actually.
Well, you want to see it again?
Yeah, let's see it again. I love to see this.
Let's take a watch. Look at this one, folks. Watch it get literally disassembled. Okay, let me start that again. Watch it get disassembled here in flight. It's going, and it's gone. That was cool.
Oh, yes. Look at it.
Man,
falling to the ground like that trash it is.
Man, it got disassembled like Lego pieces, man, I tell you. Moving on from that little clip, and speaking of air defense fire, moving us on down towards Odessa, we also got to see the Ukrainian air defense working really hard down here, too. There goes one of them. Right into the sea. And here goes another one. There it is out there at the sea. Down and away it goes to Davy Jones' locker.
It can join the ranks of the Moskva.
Oh, here goes another one. Man. Impressive work right here. We then additionally were able to see that we got some footage in Odessa today from inside of the Sink T, which was the vessel that was hit, the Turkish cargo vessel in the port of Odessa, yesterday. And the footage is showing from the inside of this ship that it appears that it was not carrying the generators that the Russians claimed it was. It was carrying fruits and vegetables. That was it. So here's the... Look at all of these tomatoes. That doesn't look like generators to me.
Son durum bu arkadaşlar. Son durum bu. Son durum bu. Allah yardım etsin.
So, quite interesting to see. It was not carrying the strategic infrastructure the Russians claimed it was, which is not shocking at all. Moving on from that and on down into the city of Pokrovsk, we also got to see a little bit of footage down here in the area of Pokrovsk, where the Ukrainians were taking out some Russians. But before we get on into that, we do have a little question to ask y'all. Mertz has actually compared Putin to Adolf Hitler today. What do y'all think about that? And Matthew, what do you think about it?
All right. So we have heard this before because obviously Putin's a devil. So obviously other devils are comparable to him. But Germany's merch today has compared Vladimir Putin to Adolf Hitler and says that he will not stop with Ukraine, which of course Germany has been saying that. And what are your thoughts? 46% said that Putin is equally bad, while 27% said Putin is actually worse, and 21% said Putin is not as bad. And I would say that Putin is equally bad. I would personally say that. Really can't say he's worse because, you know, we're comparing two really evil bastards to each other. So I would say they're pretty much on the same level. They're both equally bad and they're committing terrible atrocities. So I'm with the 46%. I would say he's definitely a bastard. And also, he's probably not going to stop with the Ukraine either. I'd also agree with Germany. But Enforcer, what say you?
I didn't say that they're both equally as bad. I definitely have to agree on that. And so with that, we are going to be moving on down into Pokrovsk, where we also were able to see the 92nd taking out some Russians. Take a little look at this. Oh, we're going to mute that. But these guys in the 92nd were putting in those work on the Russians with the CZ Bren. We all love a CZ Bren. Oh, and here they go. Laying in it low into the trees. Yeah, I guess you could say they were laying down a chili bowl.
Chile bowl.
We see the firefight continuing here as they run down the street, trying to get positions on the other side of the road to lay into them a little heavy-like. We can see them now firing down the street as they pull back a little bit, considering that the Russians are kind of starting to wrap around them on both sides of the tree line here on this road. But y'all about to see, folks, the fire here was quite effective. I can't show y'all the end of this clip here, but I can show y'all what led up to it. And, folks, we'll have to end the clip right about here, because it starts to get real juicy after this part of the clip, so we can't show y'all that. But I can tell y'all, they did quite a good job. Moving on into Donetsk, we also got to see that Donetsk and Makiivka were under attack tonight as well. Let's watch the air defense fire over the city. Sounds like machine gun fire to me. Sounds like an air defense going on. Oh? Was that the sound of creatures?
I just want to heard crickets or something.
Was that from your soundboard, my son?
Yeah, yes, it was.
I'm not, man. You know, man. I'm not gonna lie, man. When I just said creature, I was just thinking of that meme that I showed you earlier today, man. Where I was like, "Where do you get this? Where do you get this milk from? We milk it from the creature every day." And then he said, "They milk it. Oh, F me, they milk it from the creature." Like, and then you're, I mean, like, it's something like that. But, man, I'm telling you. Oh, this guy got a crack out of that joke, actually. This guy's going a little stupid for it. I appreciate him for that.
Gotta get a little goofy every once in a while.
Where do you get these Russians? We get these Russians from the hood. Every day fresh. F me. They get the Russians from the hood. Oh, this place is totally after. Man. Well, moving us on into the next clip. We also get to hear the drone. You hear the air defense. Oh! Something has exploded. Moving on from that clip, I just got to hear a little bit more air defense. Look at the Tracify out there in the distance. People are saying that there's no video. There's video. The OBS is connected just fine, folks. It's connected just fine. It's a server issue. Just you know, make sure to, you know, refresh your stream. Or you're looking at the pitch black night that we're looking at too. One or the other.
That's what they're looking at. They're seeing the pitch black screen. They're saying no video.
Oh.
You just hear a guy in the background just breathing. The other one.
Man, this guy's getting some sort of pleasure out of this way he's breathing.
he's like at high altitude or something. He's higher than a kite when it comes to the altitude, that is.
Man. Aw, man. but anyways, we also got to see in this clip here the blue orb of Ashgabat. Very interesting. Oh, listen to that. What's that noise out there?
Could it be that it was aliens from another planet? Let's show you 10 minutes of sponsored commercials first, and you'll find out that it wasn't 10 minutes later.
Or we'll end it inconclusively, so that way you'll never know. But moving on down to the Zaporizhia, we also got to see Russian troops getting hit down here by the Ronin. The Ronin has completely changed the way they do their videos. They have barriers now on the sides. It's kind of wild looking, really. But they're about to fly this drone in and go, wow, it's a jackpot. There's 6 Russian tanks and APCs in here. They hit the meme. Like, they hit the meme. Like, man.
Bro, what in the world? A Ronin is delving into the meme category? What in the world?
Man, I mean, this is literally a treasure here. This is an endless amount of APCs and tanks all in one spot. Oh,
They let the honey badger into the honey pot. They really got it going this time. Look at them. They're hitting the building, the trucks, the APCs. They're hitting everything.
Man, look at them go.
You're out here twisting metal. Look at them. Oh wow, they've started a hot box.
Man, they started a fire. Man, a full-on fire here. It's cooking up the building quite nice. Oh, look, they're going past the porcupine, into the building, taking a right, and then picking out which one they want to hit. Man, and these were all made with fine craftsmanship here.
These were made by the finest Russian crackheads.
Believe it. Man, oh my God, they've caught on a forest fire going on. Oh my God.
Oh man, all the crackheads' efforts just went down the drain.
Dude, right now, man, there's some tweaker around there going, the copper! Like, you're trying to strip the copper wiring out of the tanks while they're burning to the ground. But anyways, folks, that is all of the news that we have for the day. There was no speech from Zelensky today. He was in Berlin, busy with his own affairs for the nation of Ukraine, so we were not able to get a speech from him. But with that in mind, folks, that is probably one of the longest news segments that we've done in a minute. It was a 2.5-hour long news segment, and I do have to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative of all of you watching. There's been 100,000 people who have watched the news alone tonight, and about 12.3 thousand of y'all were here at the peak. We're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many people continue to consider the Enforcer channel to be a primary source of news. And we thank you all massively, once again, for always watching every night. And not only that, getting this fundraiser to where it is right now. Do y'all know where it is right now? Well, I'm going to tell you anyways. It's at $4,181 raised. Can y'all believe that? $4,181. That's a lot of support to Razom for Ukraine. And that's going to be helping to save a lot of people over there in Ukraine and help the Ukrainian government to focus less on the humanitarian side of things because we're taking care of it to an extent and more on the war side. A humongous thanks to all of y'all once again for helping out in that degree. And it's wonderful to know that the Lee Spring Army will never truly die. Now, folks, usually our live streams on Sunday nights are supposed to be 2.5 hours long. That's usually what we shoot for as an ideal sort of a time window. However, we are at 2 hours and 30 minutes right now, and we just got done with the news. So we are actually going to spend, folks, for a very rare moment, another 30 minutes just tonight, though. We'll hopefully be able to return to our normal schedule on Sunday night next week because the news will hopefully be shorter or we can get through it a little bit quicker. But we are going to spend 30 minutes tonight and give our normal length of a question segment that we've always given because we do not want to leave y'all lacking without answering any of y'all's questions. Y'all have just spent a humongous amount of y'all's time here, and we want to repay y'all by trying to answer as many of y'all's questions as we can. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
Also, by the way, folks, y'all might remember the other day, jumping onto a different topic real quick, that Venezuela was actually exposed using Flight Radar 24 as their national defense, the way they monitor their airspace. They were using Flight Radar 24. So, believe it or not, after I posted that whole thing about how they were using, I posted the picture on the background. They had the projector showing the screen behind them and their whole desktop screen. I posted it and mentioned Flight Radar 24. They actually responded, believe it or not. Flight Radar 24 24 did. They actually addressed Vladimir Petrino directly, who's the defense minister of Venezuela, and literally offered to give him free receivers to be able to pick up the ADS-B data from the aircraft in the area. So even Flight Radar 24 themselves was going in on Venezuela when it comes to that. I loved it, by the way. A little bit of trolling. We like to do a little bit of trolling right here, folks. But show them Enforcer. I just put it under the likes tab, by the way. Go show the people that. It's hilarious that Flight Radar actually responded to that.
Let's go show the people this, folks. Let's go show the people here. Let's see. And where is it as under the replies?
Under the likes.
Oh, under the likes. I see here. Oh, yeah, so, you know what's funny, folks, is that Matthew put out that post on Twitter the other day, and I read a lot of the comments, and people under the post were like, oh, you're such an idiot. That's why I don't listen to your channel, because you have such bad analysis. Clearly, they're not going to show what they're really using, because Venezuela has better stuff up their sleeve. Meanwhile, Flight Radar 24 is out here going, hello, Vladimir Pedrino. If you need to improve Flight Radar 24 coverage in Venezuela, feel free to apply for free receivers at flightradar24.com/apply for receivers.
Man, honestly, I was meant as a joke, I think, but I would not be shocked at all if Venezuela suddenly signed up for hundreds of free receivers. They're no cap, we can actually get free receivers. They're probably ordering them by the dozen.
Man, yeah, honestly, man, that's pretty funny, honestly. And it really is Flight Radar 24, folks, because, some people said, how the hell do you know it's Flight Radar 24? Well, because their logo's right there at the top of the screen. It says Flight Radar 24 right there. That's literally their logo. That's the one we have on this screen right here. It's that little radar icon with Flight Radar, and then in yellow, 24 at the end of it. That's literally what's up there. You can even see the little search bar over here to the side, and also the fact that they have a gold membership right there, too. So, it's literally Flight Radar 24. And then some people are like, well, they're not going to show you the best of what they got. They have a several $100 million military budget every year. Do you think that they're going to have anything better than this? Like a satellite? Are you kidding? Some people got to use their brains around here. I gotta say.
Yeah, also, why are they flexing? Why are they flexing Flight Radar 24 in the background anyway? Because apparently they wanted that to be seen. They put it up on the projector screen in the background at the press conference that they were holding for the defense minister of Venezuela. So apparently, in his very, very interesting brain, he thought in his head, we're going to look real high-tech if we put Flight Radar 24 up in the background. They're not going to mess with us after this. It's does he not know that the U.S. military has, proprietary software and, a whole, multi-layered suite of technology they use to track stuff in the airspace? Has he not heard of NORAD? It's Flight Radar 24 is publicly sourced ADS-B data. It's not like it's something exclusive or something for just them. It's goofy. Do you really think you're fooling somebody with that?
I mean, hell, I think they might be thinking that they are. I mean, that's absolutely sad, though, folks, because that means we have as much knowledge on the airspace over Venezuela as their actual military does right now. That's really something, Yeah, I think a lot of people take it for advantage, folks, how advanced this channel is. We're more advanced than Venezuelan military intelligence, and that's something right there. We can actually say that our intelligence on the channel is better than some national militaries in their ability to gather intelligence. Now that is a real bargain in value. That's something right there. That's something. But man, I also got to say, let me take this off screen and navigate to your post on this, Matthew, because I gotta show y'all some of the replies, folks, because I always get a crack out of
Be careful, by the way. Somebody might put something wild in there.
Let's look at Romania. But I'm gonna. That's why I took it off screen. I'm gonna pre-check it and make sure there's nothing too bad, and I'll just scroll through the pre-approved areas according to our group, our defense group, as we have it, of course. But let me see if I can get to it, because it's quite a lot of posts ago. We post a lot all the time, folks, on Twitter. But let me see here. Oh, eventually we'll get to it. Oh, eventually we'll get to it. You sees. I've
been posting like a fiend on Twitter. I've been ramping up the post. I feel bad for Miss Disa and all the record keepers that keep up with that, because I'm posting like a fiend. I think these days, because I've ramped it up over the last week or so, I'm posting I think 15 plus enforcer tweets and probably 30 or 40 retweets a day. So it's a lot.
Man, where the hell is the post that we made about that? Because I'm trying to find it here.
I was putting the likes tab right now.
Oh, good. Thank you so much. Vinny. Let's see. Here we are. So let me check the comments here. We actually got a lot of comments on this. Damn, this thing got 250,000 views. Good Lord, man.
Man, that's light work. I've been getting like 500,000 views a tweet like recently. Like that's light work right there. And also we're monetized on Twitter. Oh man. We're making like $1 like off of that. So it's fantastic.
Oh man, let's see here. I'm trying to see. Let's see. Oh, they have 3 of their chats. Hold on. I gotta see if I can find the people. Because crazy enough, when he first posted it, there was nothing but comments that were like, "You idiot," and I was like, "These people don't know what they're talking about." But let's see.
I might have blocked them.
You may have, because I'm not really seeing them. Let's see. Apparently, someone, I don't know if they're unironically saying this, but they said it's a good strategy. It's cheap. I don't really think that's a good strategy. You know, it's like the fact that you might not be able to see any aircraft in your airspace because you're using Flight Radar 24. Does it really matter if it's cheap when you literally can't see anything unless the transponder's on? Let's see here. Dang.
You know, folks, some people say like that they'll go around saying on Twitter and stuff like that. And also sometimes in the YouTube comments, they'll be like, those enforcer guys, they just block everybody on Twitter that says something they don't like. It's like, I don't block people for saying something I don't like. It's like when someone comes into the Twitter comments and says, man, you're so stupid. If only you could understand that that wasn't Flight Radar 24. It was just a map on the screen. I'll be like, okay, like, you know, like, honestly, I don't make any bones about it. Like, I don't put up with that. Like, I don't take the verbal abuse like that. If someone's making comments that are that derogatory, it's like, okay, that's going to be a block on that one. Like, when it comes to like debates, I'm totally like game for debates. I love debating everything. Like, I'm that type of person. I love to argue for like a productive reason, like, and also in good faith. But we just don't do the verbal abuse. Like some people are like okay with it. I'm just not good with it, me personally. So that's probably why the comments disappeared.
Probably. I did find one, though. Let's see. Someone said, this isn't a radar station, so of course they're using that. Are you that dumb? It's like, this person is an idiot. It's like, if they had radar stations and they actually had the ability, they probably would have that all wired into a singular point, which is the Ministry of Defense, so that way they can see exactly what the aerospace situation looks like nationwide. That's what we have. Why wouldn't they have that? You'd have to be stupid. Like, you'd have to be stupid to think that flight radar is actually an excusable use. And also, I'll say that as well, folks, as far as it goes, I don't take shit from people. Like, if people want to run their mouths at us, like, they're going to get blocked. It's like, you know, if that was real life, no one would ever dare run their mouths like that because everyone knows that there could be some sort of a counteraction. Nobody talks like that unless you're a raving idiot in real life because you don't know what someone's going to do in response. So I don't know why people act like they can get away with that on the internet and that we're going to take it. It's like this isn't McDonald's. This isn't Burger King. It's not like you can sit here and cuss me out like I'm the damn cashier and then the manager's going to tell me I can't cuss you out back or do something. Like, it's like, oh, you're going to get banned. It's like, you know, hell. It's like I don't know why people act like they can give so much disrespect and then when someone gets banned, oh, how dare they? It's like, how stupid is that? It's like there's consequences to your actions. You run your mouth like an idiot, you're going to get banned like an idiot. That's just how it works.
What does that mean? This is not Burger King or this is not McDonald's. What does that even mean?
Well, the thing is that Burger King had a motto back in the day, I think they still have it, called "Have it your way." And so the punchline was, "This isn't Burger King. You can't have it your way." And that's basically to say, "Kiss my ass, don't treat me like shit." Is how the old punchline went. But that's why I also say
I don't like it. Huh? I don't like it. I remember I had a teacher that would say it all the time, and she'd say it like so belligerently too, like over everything. She'd be like, "This isn't Burger King. You can't have it your way." I'd be like, "Why does she say that every single day?" She says that every single day, and so shrill about it too. I was like, if I hear about Burger King, you can't have it your way one more day. I'm like, first of all, I don't like Burger King. Burger King doesn't taste good to me.
Yo, that's like an L take, bro.
No, that's a W. That's a big W. But also on top of that, I'm like, I don't give a damn about the slogan of Burger King either. It's like, what are you going to justify to me not taking crap talking about Burger Kings? Oh, what the hell?
Man, I'm going to be honest. I'm just going to be straight up with y'all though. I don't take crap. I don't take crap at all. And also on top of that, like another thing that I got to say, here's the honest truth of it, is that a lot of people who talk like that are like, that have to like insult to get a point across, they are absolutely stupid. They hardly know what they're talking about 99% of the time. Like, they live in fantasy land. Like, they're sovereign citizen flat earther people. So it's like, I'm not going to take shit from someone that's that stupid on top of that. I mean, like, it's one, I'm not going to take crap from anyone whether they're smart or not. Two, I'm also definitely not going to take crap from someone who's that stupid. You know, that's just the truth of it. So
you should never take crap from anybody. If you're taking crap from people, first of all, it's unsanitary, number one. Who's just going to, what are you going to put your hands out there and be like, here, I'll take that crap? Like, who the hell's doing that?
Well, I mean, there is some, like, we're not going to.
I mean, maybe in the insane asylum or something, but not out here in the street. Like, you're not just seeing people, like, taking crap. Like, you know, like, who's doing that?
Well, I mean, but anyways, outside of that whole point, it is what it is. It just is what it is, but I'm not taking crap, as simply put. And I also saw, someone say, did you, someone say, did you block a specific person? We don't get into specific cases, but the answer is that if anyone's ever given us crap, it doesn't matter who they are, they get blocked. In that particular case, we got brigaded like 3 times by that guy in his community. So yeah, that would be the answer. We don't deal with that. We don't go around beefing with people. And I also like just speaking in general, I don't know why. Back in the day, other YouTubers made it their business to get involved in the hot dog man deal and actively get involved in that in one way or the other, because it's like that was a thing in between the two of us. So if you got involved in that and was getting involved in brigading and harassment, obviously you were going to get blocked. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, it's time for us folks to get on into the questions, because we got plenty of them and very little time. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat, we have 3 remaining super chats. Then we're going to get to our live chat questions. But first of all, though, a huge shout out to Espen Turgenhagen for putting in a $100 donation to the fundraiser, and a big shout out to Virgil Jordan for also putting in a $50 support to the fundraiser as well. And a huge shout out to Espen and Virgil for helping to make that possible. And moving back to our super chat question, we did get a 20 from Old Warrior Fella. And Old Warrior, he said, Cambodian Major General, I don't know if he's joking with that. I'm not really sure. But he said there was a major general apparently eliminated in an airstrike yesterday. It seems Cambodia has no secure comms, and they were using cell phones and hobby walkie-talkies. Are you being serious about that name, by the way, Old Warrior? Like, I want to lean toward it's a joke, but I'm like, at the same time, though, I'm like, well, maybe it's possible, maybe it's not, I'm not sure. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say I haven't heard about that myself, and I don't know if that actually happened or not, but that's very interesting to hear, and I will try and look into it. So a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that has addressed that well, and we're on to the next one.
And we also had a $2 super chat from Bruce Lee, and he said, Dark Vader's Joker, Dark Knight's Joker voice. Why so serious, LSA?
Listen, you gotta understand.
Wait, hold on. That's not the Dark Knight Joker. That's Netanyahu.
Well, some people kind of look at it as the same thing, but what I'm trying to say is, do you like Burger King? Do you like playgrounds? Well, I like them both. I eat at one and bomb the other. But outside of that, what I'm trying to say to everyone in the West is, do you not understand what we're dealing with out here? You gotta understand that there's bigger things going on. Real big things. 2,000-pound bomb kind of big things. And, we have to stop Iran. but anyway, oh man, Russia is our friend. We all know that. Russia is Israel's friend. And then I heard that and I was like, okay. I was like, all right, time to reassess the strategic evaluation in the Middle East, because I was like, that's not something I like to hear. You see, I wake up in the morning, folks, I piss red, white, and blue. The doctor told me I should get that checked out, but I don't give a shit. I don't really like it when people start saying that they consider enemy nations to be something friendly or serving their interests. That's not something I like to hear, just being honest with y'all. But anyways, I hope that does address that well. And also I saw M60 save Richard Nixon. Now listen, I might do the voice of Netanyahu, but one thing is absolutely clear. I'm not a crook. And I've got to be honest with you. That whole Watergate thing, it really got out of hand. The media, They tortured me with it. I don't know why they did that to me. It's because I'm not one of those Harvard boys, one of those Ivy League school kids. I grew up in poverty. My father owned an orange ranch in Southern California, and when he sold it, they found oil on it. That's how unlucky we were. I mean, honestly, man, Nixon was about to do like a Rodney Dangerfield skit when he would do that like joke. He was like, "Oh man, I tell you, I'm getting no respect around here. My parents were real poor. Oh man, they owned an orange grove in Southern California. They sold it and then they found oil. Oh man, I'm telling you." Like, honestly, but anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Mark Andre Burnett, who put in a $2 super chat as well. And thank you very much, Mark, for that support and also helping keep the channel going. And it's now time, folks, to actually jump into our live chat questions proper. And first of all, let's grab our Morse code decoders. We had the whole roster tonight. Paul Schultz, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Heroic Fluffiness, Kush, Corey, Terry, Sire, and Brian. They said Syria looks to be in pretty bad shape right now and only getting worse in LLT, LSA.
And I... Ding, 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 shh. And that is the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That is the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all tremendously, humongously, for getting that Morse code message correct. The Lee Springer Army Signal Corps gets it correct time and time again. And it truly is a wonderful, amazing, and fantastic thing to know that y'all continue to get that correct up until this day. And so with that, folks, it's time for us to move on into those live chats. What we got, Matthew?
All right, so moving into the live chat questions proper, it is now time to get into those questions. And our first one here goes to AF Kaplan, who said, has there been any word of those terrorists in Australia being apprehended by local law enforcement, or are they still at large? And I think it was a father and son. And once again, I want to make it clear it's all allegedly because I don't have all the facts nailed down concretely. But I believe it was a father and son that pulled off that heinous act right there. I believe one of them is deceased. I think one of them still alive?
I really don't know the particular details about the attack at the moment because last I heard, both of the shooters had been neutralized, but I don't really know about their condition.
Yeah, I don't either. I think one of them is deceased, but I think the other one may be in custody or might be deceased as well. One thing I want to say, though, and this isn't like a political thing, it's just kind of like a logical common sense thing. The guy who carried that out appeared to be using a bolt action rifle. And I just saw on Twitter a minute ago that the Australians are calling for even tougher gun control on that. It's like, it's like the guy was using a bolt action rifle. It's like, it's not like it was like some type of like, military weapon or something like that. It was a bolt action. And also, it's like, if they're going to go out and commit some horrible act like they did, which is obviously horrific, what they did was absolutely heinous. Obviously, they weren't concerned with following the law, so they were going to find a way to get it one way or another. So it's like, if somebody out there in the crowd was able to own a weapon legally, they could have been like a good Samaritan. They might be able to stop that a lot quicker. Because where the hell were the police the whole time? The police were taking their sweet time getting there.
Yeah, I mean, they were. And also, that's here's the thing, folks. In Britain, where it's practically illegal to get a gun, then you just get mass stabbings, or someone rents a moving van and then drives it through a concert or something along those lines. If someone wants to conduct a terrorist attack, they're going to find a way. And I don't really, I just got to say, the whole thing with the gun restrictions, here in America, it's we need to ban semi-automatics. And then they're going to move from that to the bolt actions next, because then the attacks will be conducted with bolt actions, and then we're just restricting freedoms within the Western world because of ill-minded people who come from elsewhere that are conducting it, or have been radicalized from people elsewhere who are abusing the law and abusing our rights and privileges to take advantage and end up killing other people, which is something I don't really like the idea of, is that we have to start restricting our own rights and privileges within our own nations and societies because of ill-minded people from abroad. I don't like the idea of that. But anyways,
yeah, I don't either. Also, Stealthor said, is it legal to defend yourself against the shooter? I'll be honest with you, I don't know Australia's laws. It sounds like Australia's got some extremely strict laws when it comes to that. I believe one of the perpetrators, allegedly, this is all allegedly, by the way, I believe one of them was actually licensed to own 6 or 7 guns for some purpose. So apparently you can have guns. You just have to have the right licenses for them. But I don't know about the self-defense laws in Australia, how that works. I would assume by common sense that if someone's, taking pot shots at you, that you could probably defend yourself. That would seem to make sense, but I don't know for a fact how that works.
Yeah, but I mean, people will sit there and say, "Oh, like if the guns were gone, then these attacks would end." You know what we saw? Like, you know what we saw back in the day? Well, I was talking earlier about all of those attacks that ISIS was conducting in the mid 2010s. When it came to Europe, they would do all sorts of crazy stuff. Here in America, it was always a shooting. That was how it always went. But in Europe, they came up with a million different creative ways to conduct the same sorts of attacks, honestly, with even worse results in most instances. A lot of people might forget this, but there was an attack that happened on the coast in France, in the city of Nice, at a concert, and one of the attackers, well, the lone attacker in that instance, actually rented a moving van and drove down to the concert and then floored it right into the crowd. And I think the guy ended up killing like 60 people doing that. Like, that's insane. I mean, like, I think one of the worst sorts of incidents that's ever happened in the United States was the Las Vegas incident, which ended up killing 55 people, and that guy did that with a moving van. And then in Britain, there were mass stabbings and other sorts of actions like that, and in Germany as well. So it really doesn't matter. Like what people I don't think really realize with this sort of a deal here, it really doesn't matter the method, it just matters the want to conduct that sort of mass murder, basically, and someone will find a way to do it no matter what. So I don't really understand why people should start getting their rights further restricted on gun ownership and other things, especially considering that we deprive the public of their rights, and then they just find another way to conduct an attack of a different kind. I can literally come up with endless examples, folks, of different kinds of attacks that produce heinous results that did not involve firearms, which truly does show these people will get creative if they want to do something like this. It doesn't matter if guns are unavailable, they will find a way. So it's more so about trying to curtail these people and stop them before they can conduct the attack, rather than trying to limit the kinds of ways that the attack can be conducted in. So I hope that addresses that well, in my opinion, because I'll just be honest with y'all, folks. I'm just not I don't really care the rights in particular. I'm just not really a big fan of rights being curtailed because of people's abuse of the rights that the citizenry has. It's regulating and legislating off of the worst denominator of society, which most people are not. And it's like, why in the world should everyone in a country be further restricted and have their rights further taken away because of the bad actions of a very small few?
It seems like it'd be the opposite. Like, instead of saying let's further restrict the gun rights of legal, normal citizens that aren't criminals. Instead of doing that, let's better train and arm the citizenry, so that way if the police are slow to respond like they were, that the citizenry can defend themselves properly, since the police are slow apparently. Instead, let's further take away the weapons that the civilians need to defend themselves. Like, why would you do that? It's like you can't force the police to be faster, because apparently they were responding, I guess, as quick as they could. So it's like, let's further handicap the civilian populace to where they're basically fish in a barrel at that point the next time a lunatic shows up trying to wipe people out. It doesn't make sense to me. I've never understood that.
Yeah, and I mean, Australia has quite restrictive gun laws from what I understand, and it's like, this guy still went through the process of looking clean enough to apparently get 6 or 7 firearms and then go and conduct an attack. So it's like, so apparently conducting even further restrictions is going to solve the problem, because the guy got around the restrictions, got him anyways. He met all the hoops, and then he still did it. So it's like, so everyone's going to say, well, clearly the restrictions that we have now that existed didn't work. So let's add further restrictions that also will not work, because someone's just going to jump through all those hoops again and then do it again. And it's like, that doesn't really seem to be producing anything beneficial. And also I see, Octavian Timbersanu saying, I disagree respectfully, not disrespectfully. A country without guns naturally has significantly less murders. Stabbing attacks are much easier to deter than shootings, but the U.S. is different. Let's look at the murder statistics globally per 100,000. Murder per country map. Let me see if I can get one that shows per 100,000.
I would imagine that Octavian might be correct, but the problem is, though, with countries already possessing guns, like, you can't just take them away like completely. It's not possible, especially in the United States. It's a constitutional right. You can't just take them all away. So you got to find a way to work with what your situation is.
Well, actually, not necessarily. It actually appears that would generally be somewhat incorrect. Because from what we can see here, according to this graph, the United States of America, which has the largest gun ownership in the world per capita, actually has what would be considered a slightly higher crime rate, but not one that's insanely high. Gun ownership in Mexico is significantly restricted by the law, and yet they have an incredibly high murder rate, somewhere in the 20s per 100,000. In Russia, it's also quite high, with only 1% of the population owning firearms. Same in Kazakhstan, Mongolia, and many other countries in this region. Pakistan has an incredibly high murder rate and also has incredibly significant restrictions on firearm ownership. The same with South Africa, which has an abysmally high murder rate per 100,000 as a national average. So while Europe can say that the homicide rates are low, and maybe that is due to gun control, but I'd also have to say that we need to look at the statistics for the murder rates in Europe when there was no gun control. Because I would be entirely honest with y'all folks, I think if you looked back at the murder statistics in Europe before gun control started to sweep over most European countries, I have a feeling that that map is going to look very similar to what it looks like right now, where the really homicides are just incredibly low. And then on top of that, we also have to consider, folks, that the causes are let me see causes of...
By the way, what the hell is going on in Greenland? I see everybody mentioning that too. Greenland was like in bright red. It's like, what the people are like wiping each other out in Greenland every day or something? Why is it bright red?
Apparently it's somewhat violent up there. Apparently they got the Thunderdome going on up in Greenland, which is kind of crazy because they have basically no one living there. But what we have here is that in the United States of America, in the year of, let's see, what year is this? Because this is according to the CDC. This is 2025, apparently. So according to the information we have, the number of deaths in the United States this year from all homicides is 22,830 people. So per 100,000, there's a homicide rate of about 6.8. Out of those, apparently the firearm homicides accounted for 17,927 of them, which accounted for 5.4 per 100,000. Let me see if I can go to the FBI's website and see if I can get some additional information here. This is from 2010, so this doesn't really apply to modern day. Let's look at 2020.
Every time I go to the FBI website, there's like some guy that's like on the main page or something like that with like these very large eyes staring back at me. It always freaks me out.
Man, he's always saying, "What I've seen, I can't forget." And I'm like, okay, man. Like, and then I'll move on. And I'm like, whatever, dude. But let's see. So there was an estimated... in 2023, there was an estimated 19,800 homicides in the United States, rate of 5.9 per 100,000. This was lower than the estimated 22,240 victimizations that were expected this year in 2023. But we need to see the details. We want the breakdown. Let's see here. Number and rate, percentage rate. Percentage. Let's see here.
Also, by the way, folks, just for all the people, making assumptions, everybody makes an assumption. I say something, they instantly think, "Oh, Matt's anti-gun." I actually own several guns, including the ones that are considered the big bad ones that people are like, "Oh, that's the bad one." I actually own those. I'm a legal gun owner of several of those, so I'm not anti-gun. But at the same time, though, I'm not opposed to debating like the merits of some of these other things that people mention, like gun control. I mean, just because I'm a gun owner doesn't mean I should shut off critical thinking. Sometimes there may be a decent argument on some side or another, so I'm open to it at least. But generally, though, not one of these people, like I was mentioning earlier. I'm not one of these people. It's like when a shooting happens or something like in Australia, let's start taking away the guns from innocent civilians. I'm not minded like that either.
So let's see here. So let me see if I can get... So actually, what's interesting here is that according to the 2023 statistics in the United States of America, 79.6% of homicides involve the use of a firearm, with 9%, or 8.9 to be exact, involving a knife, 2% involving a blunt instrument, so a crowbar or something like that, 5% being a personal weapon. It's undetermined what that means. I would have to look at their definition for that. And then 5.5% being an other non-personal weapon, and then 4.1% being unknown. So they just couldn't find the cause for those. But we would generally assume that they do not fall within a firearm, as bullets and entry and exit wounds are quite obvious what they are. So the 4.1% unknown falls within the other categories. We just don't know which ones. So out of that, The lion's share majority of homicides within the United States are conducted with firearms. In the United Kingdom, however, according to their homicide statistics, 46% of homicides involve a sharp instrument along the lines of a knife or something like that. And apparently, this was the most common method of killing, followed by hitting or kicking without the use of a weapon. So apparently in the UK you can just get kicked and punched to death, and that's a fairly common way to go. But
That's probably gangs of kids or something like that, or not kids, but like, adolescents or something like that, like ganging up and beating somebody down or something.
yeah, so that's actually quite interesting. But nevertheless, 46% of the homicides involve a knife. And if you look at the UK, and if you really look at this sort of an idea altogether, because this is what I'll say on it, is that the idea is increasing public safety by reducing the ways that people can kill each other. So in the UK, it started with guns, and they went through all the legislations to make it to where it's practically impossible to have a gun, and if you have one, it's heavily restricted to where it has to be at a private gun club. You can never take it home. You can never have the ammunition in the same place, so on and so forth, yada, 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 all that stuff. So then they moved on from that, and then we see that stabbings now make up the majority of homicides within the UK. Now they've moved into heavy regulation of knives within the UK, what type of size of knife you can get, where you can carry them, how much restrictions there are at the store to buy one, even just for kitchen use, and then it moves on into that, because people are always, like, the truth is people are always going to be killing each other, because that's just a part of human life, is that people are going to get angry enough with each other that there's going to be homicides. So the endless push for public safety just keeps moving the barrier to more and more restrictive actions. So obviously first it's firearms, because that's the largest majority of homicides when firearms are legal. But then once those are largely legal, then it moves on to knives, and then it moves on to something else, and so on. And that's where I just have to say it doesn't make any sense to keep restricting it, because we end up in an endless perpetual cycle of restricting whatever the largest majority of homicides are being conducted with, until we end up restricting everything eventually. I mean, people are like, eventually if you ban everything, the large majority of people are going to be killed by getting suffocated with a pillow, and then you're going to start seeing restrictions on the pillows.
Yeah, maybe so. Also, by the way, I see apparently we have an Aussie in the chat, Thomas Armstrong. He says, "Hey, brother, Aussie here." He said self-defense is legal in Australia, using the minimum necessary force to defend yourself, but you couldn't be carrying a firearm in public or at home. Wow. Also, self-defense is not a genuine reason for ownership. Now that's wild. I'll be honest with you. When I hear stuff like that, I'm not saying America is perfect by any means, but it makes me very glad that we moved away from Britain, because I believe Australia is a Commonwealth of the UK. Is it still a Commonwealth of the UK, or did it used to be?
They're a part of the Commonwealth of Nations, but they're an independent country completely.
Okay, yeah, but it was a Commonwealth of the UK, so same kind of thinking went into it and stuff like that. So I'll be honest with you, like, when I hear stuff like that, that's kind of wild, because I personally, as an individual, I don't like the government telling me how I can defend myself, what weapon I can use. It's like, if obviously people have guns in Australia, so in my personal opinion, I should at least have the right to be able to also have a similar weapon to defend myself in the exact same way that someone could use to take me out. So it's like, if you're in public and someone has a legal right in Australia to have a gun for hunting reasons, then obviously the individual allegedly who just carried this out in Australia did that exact same thing. So all the Australians in the street were sitting ducks, basically, for that lunatic, because they didn't have a genuine reason, quote unquote, to have a gun for self-defense. I just have a huge problem with that personally. That's one reason I'm kind of proud to be an American. And not kind, I'm very proud to be an American, actually, because I'm glad we have the Second Amendment.
And also, more importantly, folks, the ownership of firearms within the United States isn't even connected to the self-defense aspect or any other aspect, rather than national service in the militia, which is also why it's incredibly restrictive, and there's hardly any, it's incredibly difficult to create any laws that start to curtail firearm ownership, especially at the federal level, is because generally the argument actually moves more so into national defense, which is something that a lot of people don't know about, because the understanding of the Second Amendment is highly warped in this country. country these days. Like, for some reason, there's a large group of people that believe the government wrote into their own constitution an amendment that allows the public to arm itself in open rebellion and insurrection against the government, which is not the case. But the Second Amendment exists so that way we could have a national militia, which was a huge concept back when we founded the country. And while that's been largely removed from the modern ebb and flow of the country legally, because we have a professional standing army that's quite large these days, at the beginning of the country's existence, the militia was the armed force of the state, federally and at the state level. So for that reason, the Militia Act of 1792 laid out who exactly was in the national militia, and of course who would need to be called up to serve, which is why we own firearms in this country, is because if we ever need to defend the nation, or like this is technically the legal reason why we have firearms, and a large amount of them in the United States, if there ever was an invasion of the nation, or the government called us up to execute the laws of the Union, and so on and so forth, we can be called forward to join the militia, and in the militia, you provide your own equipment. The government does not provide the equipment for you, so you have to be ready and armed to serve the nation if it ever calls on you, and that's really the legal reason why citizens in this country are armed, and quite heavily at that.
Yeah, I would say so. For all the Europeans, though, like and me personally, and hopefully nobody takes this as being political, by the way, because this shouldn't trigger anybody. It's just a personal opinion, but hopefully it doesn't. But for the Europeans out there, they're like, oh, the guns, like they cause, gun violence. Me personally, I don't think like that. I think personally, it's the crazy people that get their hands on guns that end up committing the violence. It's not like the guns out there floating around like a ghost, like taking people out. It's the person that got the gun. So in my mind, I'm like, and this is a little bit of a slippery slope, so there's some caveats to it, but I'm personally not opposed to example if someone has been like committed to a mental institution or something like that, and they have like psychological issues that are quite severe. I'm not opposed to having a temporary stay on their gun rights, like for example, temporarily halt their ability to possess a firearm while they're in that state, or a little bit afterwards as well, until they're recovered, because it doesn't make sense to me to put firearms in the hands of people that are not mentally stable. It seems like a recipe for disaster. Surely, if you were standing in front of, like, let's say it's your son or something, and you bought them a firearm or something like that, you would surely take that away from them if you saw they were mentally unstable, if you're being responsible. So why wouldn't you do that with pretty much everybody?
Yeah, I would have to agree for sure. And also, really quickly, I see some people bringing up the old argument in the chat about the Second Amendment, and I got to explain this really quickly because a lot of people are really misinformed on this, and I don't say that to degrade anyone's intelligence on this, but there is this huge idea out there and logic behind the Second Amendment that is completely untrue, and I don't know why it's pushed so heavily. The Second Amendment does not exist for the citizens' ability to conduct an armed rebellion to overthrow the U.S. government due to claims of tyranny. The U.S. government, by its own definition, when it was founded by the Founding Fathers, cannot be tyrannical because it is an elected representative of the nation. You cannot have a tyranny when you elect the tyranny, is generally the concept behind the U.S. government, and always has been. You can read in the Constitution in Section 1, Article 8, if I'm not mistaken, it's actually Article 1, Section 8, that one of the duties of the Congress is to conduct the following, and one of them is to suppress insurrections and repel invasions by calling forth the militia. The militia, the one referenced in the Second Amendment. That is one of the reasons why you have the right to own firearms in this country. It's not to overthrow the government, it's to support the government against an insurrection. That's one of the very duties of the Congress, is to call forward this militia that you have the right to own firearms for, to put down insurrectionists that are trying to claim that there's a tyranny of some sort within this country. Additionally, if you look at the National Militia Act of 1903, which is the standing law at this moment about what the national militia is, it specifically states that men aged 18 years to 45 years within the United States of America that are of able body are all part of the national militia, and that is what compromises the national militia. It will never be called up in the modern day, but that is the law on the books, and that means that every male in the country aged 18 to 45, Matthew and me included, and every other male in the country that fits that age bracket that is not a cripple or handicap, they are actually the ones who are the national militia. If the nation ever was invaded, or if an insurrection ever occurred, the government, the federal government, and the state governments technically have the right to call all of you up and say, You need to call to a muster station like a city hall or a public library or something like that and gather for civil authorities to organize you into a militia to put down this insurrection or an armed invasion. It's a last-ditch effort if that was ever called up, but that's technically how it would work. And so it is not a right that you have that the government gave you to, well, not that the government gave you, but it's not a right that the government has outlined that is to allow you to overthrow the government. It is a right that you have to arm yourself to defend the nation that we fought and died for to create 250 years ago. That's how the right exists. And I don't know why there's this public opinion out there that it exists for you to have an ability to rip down the government that we fought so hard to found 250 years ago.
I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure if too many people are really saying or really arguing that point, to be honest with you. I didn't see too many people arguing that one. Honestly, I've never heard too many people saying otherwise, to be honest with you, on that one. There's a couple of fringe people that probably say that, but I think most people probably get it. I think the thing that most people are trying to point out, or at least some people, maybe like the Europeans that are generally in nations that don't have a lot of guns. Here's the numbers, folks. I pulled it up because the truth is kind of in the numbers here. I pulled up the question, what is the murder rate in the United States versus the UK? In the United States, the murder rate is approximately 5.7 to 5.8 per 100,000 people. That's murders, that is. And in the United Kingdom, it's 1 to 1.2 per 100,000. So the UK generally does not allow you to own guns, and the United States does. So it looks like the trade-off for being able to have guns in the United States is the murder rate's higher. That's if you assume that, there's not societal differences that make up for that. So the murder rate in the U.S. is about 5 to 6 times higher than the U.K., and the U.K. doesn't allow guns. So there is, I would say, it's fair to say there is a trade-off to having the Second Amendment and having guns. But with the way it works in the United States, you can't just take the guns away. So you can't just take them, because then you're going to have all the criminals still holding on and maintaining their guns, and then the law-abiding citizens that gave them up would be screwed, like they kind of are in Australia and the other countries. So that can't be the answer, just to take the guns.
Yeah, that wouldn't really make a lot of sense. And also, I saw someone say, the government can't be tyrannical. Okay, buddy. I don't think you're understanding this, but that's what the nation is founded off of. The fact that the Declaration of Independence says that we have a right to rise up against a tyrannical government was about the British government, not about all governments. The idea that we had about the Revolutionary War is that we didn't have elected representatives in Parliament, so the taxes being raised on the colonies was unjust because we didn't have elected representation that spoke on, deliberated, or voted on those taxes being levied. And that was inherent in the tyranny in which we rose up against. The U.S. government is an elected representation of the people. So if the government is doing something stupid, it's not a tyranny. The people voted for it, however it goes. Whether you like the decision or not, it's apparently the will of the people. And so the will of the people is what works. If it was a tyranny, you wouldn't see so many restrictive actions being made by the Supreme Court and the Congress on the executive, or any other branch on any other two. It wouldn't be like that. It would be a singular dictatorship run directly out of the executive, where their orders were law and the Supreme Court cannot challenge them, and the Congress wouldn't even dare to question them or even take any actions against an executive, or the Congress or the Supreme Court doing one or the other all the same. That doesn't exist. You might not like some actions of the U.S. government, and you might think that some of them are bordering on the line of draconian. But if you believed that you had a right to conduct a rebellion against this country, the Founding Fathers would disagree with you wholeheartedly. The Founding Fathers themselves, especially George Washington, literally put down rebellions right after the U.S. was founded. Wearing the uniform of a general of the Continental Army, now the U.S. Federal Army, he led an army into Pennsylvania to put down the Whiskey Rebellion, and several citizens were killed in the process of conducting that insurrection against the U.S. government. So if you ever believe that the Founding Fathers gave you a written right to conduct a rebellion against the government they founded, you'd be sorely mistaken, because you would have been on the end of their own firing line of the Founding Fathers, because they put down insurrections years after the U.S. Constitution was ratified in 1787. And for every decade after that, there's endless amounts of rebellions and insurrections you can see in this country that were put down by the U.S. government that clearly shows there is no legal standing, right, or authority of the citizenry to conduct an armed insurrection against the U.S. government. So with
Who's
that,
saying that, by the way? Like, who's arguing that?
I see a couple of people in the chat. They'll just say things like it's tyrannical, or you do have that right, or it is that reason. That's something that was come up with, folks, in like the 70s and the 80s by extremist groups in the United States that tried to reinterpret the Second Amendment. That is not the actual legal precedent that the Second Amendment exists for.
Yeah, that's so few people saying that, it's almost not worth addressing.
But I address it, man, because if you ask anyone out there today what the Second Amendment really is for, they're going to tell you, well, it's to overthrow the government. And it's like, no, it's not, obviously. It's like that, if you look at the legal precedent for that and look at the context, there's no way to come up with that. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're going to get some more questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right. So the nenext one here goes to AF Kaplan, who said Russia's economy is in a precarious state. So how can they even give support to revive these groups in the Middle East that are causing terror?
And can you reread that one again?
Russia's economy is in such a precarious state. How can they even give support to these radical groups in the Middle East trying to cause terror?
It's generally not a money issue. It's more so an equipment issue, and they could have a large amount of small arms sitting somewhere in armories in Russia doing nothing, and they could just be shipping those down to them to help them out. Because it doesn't always involve hard cash that is fluid. It could just be assets that they have, like equipment and weapons that they could provide to ISIS to continue to support them. So that could be a possibility. So I hope that does answer that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a question from Julian, who said, do you think it's possible that Syria let it happen to bait America into dealing with ISIS for them?
I mean, you could, but they might be very soft-handed on it, and they also might not be able to follow through completely. And also, I'll also have to say, you don't really want to outsource a job to a former terrorist group to take out a another terrorist group. It might not end up too well, and it also might end up disastrously. So I think that we personally should be in there dealing with that matter, because American lives are at stake if we allow that to grow due to our benevolence. But I hope that does address that well, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Nick. And he said, do you think Russia's economy is actually worse than we are hearing, considering that Russia typically tries to hide the truth of how bad things generally are in the war that they started?
It probably is quite bad. It's probably worse than it really is, because they try and hide it as much as they can, but they can only hide it to so much of a degree, and whenever we get a snapshot of the Russian economy, it represents the true situation, and it is quite poor. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a question from Dalton, who said, when do y'all think the war is going to escalate into an open conflict between NATO and the Axis of Resistance? And thank you both for a great show.
I would have to say it's practically within the next few years. There really isn't a lot of time left before a world war breaks out. We're pretty much on the verge of one in multiple different fronts right now, either with the Chinese or the Russians. So I would say probably all the way up until about 2040, we're in the hot seat at the moment, and this could happen at any time, and it would take masterful statesmanship, which we're not seeing right now, to be able to try and avoid that sort of a situation. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, I saw someone say in the chat, I agree to a degree with enforcement, but I don't think the U.S. voted for an invasion of Venezuela and Canada. Here's the thing, though. Here's what a lot of people don't get. You didn't vote for specific topical items. You voted for the competency of an official, and that's something that's a little bit interesting about how people view things in America. They view it as, if I voted for someone, I had to have voted for everything that he did, and that's not true at all. You're voting off of someone who's running an election, and they say a whole bunch of campaign topics and points, and you're not really listening. You're not really supposed to be listening to exactly what they say, because the situation is fluid, and what they're saying right now might not even be the case the next day, or might not be the best move. What you're listening for is the competency of that person, and seeing if it sounds like they really know what's going on and will be able to make the good judgment calls. And then you elect someone based off of their competency more so than their political party points or anything like that, although people don't do that these days. So if you elect a guy who is the president of the United States, he is there for 4 years. The public apparently believed that he was the most competent of their options, and so for the next 4 years, he is exacting the will of the republic, at least in the capacity of his office, by doing whatever actions he does. Now, if the people don't like what he's doing, and they've now decided decided that he's an incompetent commander-in-chief or an incompetent president, then when the next election cycle comes around, he may have jeopardized a position for his party, or he may have jeopardized his chance at re-election if he had the option at re-election at that point. But that's generally how it works. It's kind of like letting a genie out of the bottle. You've got to be pretty sure when you go to the ballot box that when you slip a vote in, that you're voting in the person that you think is actually the most competent and capable of the options you have available. So I hope that addresses that.
I would disagree a little bit. I think when people are voting, they are voting for the single or the couple of issues that they're making a big deal about, whatever candidate it is. They're voting for that agenda. That's what they're voting for. If the president doesn't have to be necessarily that competent. Now, obviously, there are a couple of things that have to be there. Like, for example, you have to be able to trust the person to do what they say they're going to do. You also have to trust that they're not going to be a lunatic after they get into office, which, is a big problem these days. And number three, you have to be generally understanding or at least agreeing with most of their top policy points. So, competency is good if you can get it, but it's presumed that the president's going to have a good cabinet around him, most likely, or at least he'll pick a good cabinet or have good suggestions that he'll put into place that will guide him properly. So, I think that's generally what the folks should be doing there, because I'll be honest with you, there's not such thing as like a truly, really competent president. Name out of the last 10 presidents we've had, like a president that you would say is like, oh yeah, like that guy was really competent. I'll be honest with you, none of them are really that competent, but they have the policy points people are looking for, and generally you have to be able to trust them to actually carry it out.
Well, out of the last 10, I can easily name 3: Eisenhower, Kennedy, and Nixon. They were fairly competent.
I don't know. Like, to me, they certainly have their strong points. Like some of them, well, I wouldn't say Nixon's competent. I'll be honest with you. What kind of competent person is breaking into the opponent's offices in the middle of the night?
Well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about more so his foreign policy. If he was incompetent, he wouldn't have been elected in the literal landslide that's practically never been seen in 1972. The whole nation would have hated him and they would have voted him out. Instead, he won practically every electoral vote except for, I think, a handful of them.
Yeah, I would disagree a little bit personally.
But that's what I'd say. Hell, look at Eisenhower. Eisenhower was quite competent in foreign policy and in domestic policy, as well as Kennedy generally. Those were 2 incredibly good presidents. If it wasn't for Kennedy's approach and the Cuban Missile Crisis, we would have been short-sold. If we hadn't taken the kind of approach that he did, and if we hadn't taken the advice of Eisenhower, people back then voted on competency, because you would see that Eisenhower gained more votes after people saw what he was about in his first term and his second election, and you would also see the same thing for Nixon before the Watergate scandal came up, and then he had to resign. So people back then,
I guess it depends on how you're defining competency, or like what's considered a competent president. The technical definition of competent is having the necessary ability, knowledge, or skill to do something successfully. When you elect a president, what do you want them to do? You want them to advance the agenda that you voted for, generally speaking. So what do you need to have, or what skills do you need to possess as a president to do that? Simply being trustworthy and being determined. That's basically it. They don't have to be an expert, like, for example, in foreign policy, because it's expected that they'll get people that are advising them that will have that expertise, like true experts in the field, because there are too many things a president has to focus on to be an expert in every single category. We're not trying to elect, like, Kim Jong-un, like, that tries to pretend to be an expert in everything. We just want somebody that's trustworthy and that has the ability to push forward the agenda that people voted for them to advance. That's my personal view on it.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, though, man, when you look at some guy up there on the stage and, he's the latest and greatest at everything, you can kind of sit there and go, this guy's got an ego issue. He may not be a competent commander because his ego is going to get in the way of decision making. That's how I would look at it if I was making an analysis of someone who was going to be elected in. It's like, well, clearly they're not going to be good at their job. They're ego-driven and narcissistic to a degree. It's a inherent flaw. And then you vote off of that sort of assessment instead of just going, I like this deadline point that may or may not change on anything on a moral issue. And I'm going to vote for this guy just because he's saying something I kind of agree with, instead of taking a look at him as an individual and going, would he be a competent commander or leader in that position? And the answer may or may not be yes or no, depending on who it is. And back then people used to make those assessments. Nowadays, people just go, did he say like gun control, yes or no, or abortion, yes or no, and depending on those answers, I'm just going to vote for him on that, and then worship the cult, basically, around whoever I picked.
Yeah, me personally, if I was the president, the main things I would focus on is being completely transparent about everything I was doing, even if it was sometimes ugly. Like, for example, if there was things that were failures, like because every president's going to have failures. Everything can't go perfectly. It's just not the way life works. Be honest with the people when there are failures. If it cost you a few voters the next time your election cycle comes around, then so be it. I mean, you're not trying to make a lifelong career out of it. You're only there for like 2 terms maximum as the president. So if you need to be honest, be honest. You know, now obviously they're going to gloss over a few things here and there, but on the big ticket items, be honest about it. Also, by the way, when you actually put experts around you, like your cabinet, actually listen to them and put the best people that are considered the best top experts in their field on your cabinet, not people that are just yes men that aren't going to listen or actually tell you the truth. Then you want people that are actually going to disagree with you when there's something that you're wrong about. And the president should welcome that. Now, obviously, they don't want it televised because you don't want the president to look like a fool on television. But in private, though, when they have cabinet meetings and things like that, there should be experts at the table willing to say, Mr. President, I disagree with you on that. Here's what we should be doing. And while I respect your position, I'm the expert in the field. This is what my advice is, and I'm going to have to stick with it. Instead, today, you have it to where if someone makes a stand like that, they get their ass fired and they're gone like in a week. That's not the way it's supposed to run. And if I was the president, I wouldn't run it like that.
But that's what I would say is a judgment of competency, though. Like if you're looking at someone in a presidential debate, and and before they say anything, they have to say, "I'm the greatest at counting apples." Many people come around and go, "Wow, I'm just so good at counting apples." And then the other guy on the stage is going, "Apples, I was Johnny Appleseed." Then you can look at those two and go, this isn't really a good lot of them. It seems like this one guy's senile and the other guy is so narcissistic he can't see beyond his nose unless if it's saying how great he is. So, you could look at that in, say, the primaries, and go, well, these people aren't really going to be our best picks here. Because this guy isn't going to know what's going on, and this other guy is too narcissistic to listen to anyone tell him what's going on. So not good picks. That's a judgment of competency. That's what it should be on. Instead, people sit there and go, look at this dying old man. His brain's not even here anymore, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And then the other guy here, he won't listen to anyone unless if you're literally saying after every word how great and amazing the guy is. And then looking at those two, you could clearly go, well, this isn't really a good pick because this guy isn't going to listen to shit anyone tells him, and the other guy won't even remember anything anyone tells him. So then we're not having a good option here. We need to look at some other candidates within these parties and pick out someone who actually will listen and be competent in that degree. And once again, it gets back to a measure of competency. Even when we're talking about that, like listening to advisors, you have to measure if they're going to be competent enough to do that or not. And if they're not, pick another candidate.
Yeah, I can kind of see what you're saying a little bit on that. It's just,
but people don't do that.
I don't think our current situation is anywhere close to what either one of us is describing.
Yeah, but people don't do that though, because here's what they'll do, folks. They say on one side, if they're no for abortion and yes for, well, if they're no for abortion and yes for gun control, I'll vote. And if they're the other way, I'll vote. Doesn't matter who it is. So they can get literal dying corpses up there on stage, and people will just vote for them just because they say the thing, they say the line. And it's like, we don't, like, it doesn't matter what line's being said. It doesn't matter at all because all that stuff's decided in the Congress anyway. So what does it matter? What matters is if that person is going to be effective at conducting foreign policy, which is one of the major duties of the president, and also would be an effective commander that would be able to listen to the generals of the armed forces and their best knowledge and advice, considering that they are career soldiers in the field. So that's what we're generally looking for, and that's really what you want. So you should be more so judging who you want to vote for based off of their perceived competency, regardless of political affiliation, rather than the fact that they just say the thing and it sounds cool, and then you vote for them that way, because that's not at all a good way to vote.
Well, you know what would be really scary? If a democracy ever got to this point, we might be screwed. Like, for example, you know how your cabinet is supposed to be consisting of people that are the most qualified? Like, for example, Secretary of Health, like you want them to be like the top doctor in their field or like a really competent doctor. Also, like, for example, transportation secretary, it might be good to have someone who's actually worked in transportation, things like that. It would be really scary if they started picking cabinet members that were simply the most wealthy, like, for example, just billionaires just because they had the money and they wanted the influence to put them in those positions. That would be scary.
Yeah, that would be pretty scary. It's kind of getting a little bit there right now, honestly, over the past few years, but it's getting there. But let's see. I see Some people saying, Misty said, people don't think the way they should. I'd agree. It should be taught in people because it used to just be understood. Like, if like you can watch this, folks. I'll show you this. 1972 presidential election. This was what the campaign map looked like in 1972. Nixon won 520 electoral votes versus 17 for McGovern. This is a landslide. This is a literal landslide. He won practically every electoral vote, and on top of that, he had 61% of the popular vote as well. And that's because, if you go back and look at the 1968 election, let's see, 1968 presidential election, which I'll show y'all right here, he actually didn't win by that much. He got 301 electoral votes and 43% of the popular vote, but that wasn't anything at all. So people sat there and listened to him, and this is how people used to vote back then. You can take a lot of elections from this time and era and see this as examples. They would go, none of these guys have ever been the president yet, but I kind of like what he's saying, and he seems to be fairly competent and know what's going on, so we'll vote for him and we'll give him a chance. And then he got a chance, and he showed the country in those next 4 years that he was very good as president, very good in foreign policy, and generally was quite attuned with what the population wanted. So then in the next election, he literally won in an endless landslide. And what's ironic about it is that the Watergate scandal didn't even help him with this at all. Like, it pretty much affirmed what they already knew, so he didn't even have to break into the Democratic National Convention at Watergate to win this way, because they basically already knew everything that they found out of Watergate. So he won a landslide because he was actually pretty damn good at what he did. And you would see that for Eisenhower. You would also see that for a lot of other officials during this period that won their second term. Usually the public was smart enough to go, wow, this guy's really shown us over the last 4 years he's quite competent and in tune. He can make bad situations okay, and he can make good situations great. Now I'll vote for him, and I'm convinced.
If Watergate happened today in the modern day, instead of getting mad at Nixon, the whole country would get mad at the other person for letting them break in.
Yeah, honestly.
They'd be pissed off at the Democrat National Convention for letting them break in, and also they'd be mad talking about, it's a government conspiracy. It's a conspiracy.
So I'll show you this one, folks. The 1952 and the 1956 presidential elections. Sadly, I can't show you Kennedy. Kennedy was shot in his first term, so we do not have a second term as an example for him. But here is the 1952 presidential election, and then here is the 1956 presidential election. People were pretty happy with Eisenhower from the bat. He was a World War II legend. He won 55% of the popular vote and 442 electoral votes. When you moved to 1956, he then won 57.4% of the popular vote. He actually brought more people over to his side, and then on top of that, he won more electoral votes on top of that. People actually back then paid attention and went, I'm pretty satisfied with his competency. I think he's pretty good. And more people would just vote for the guy, regardless whether he was one party or the other, but solely on whether he was good or not at being the president. And nowadays, it's not like that at all. When you watch these elections these days over the past 20 years or so, it's basically dead set, and there's maybe 4 swing states, and that's it. Because everyone else is just dead set. I vote red all the way or I vote blue all the way, and I will not question it no matter how bad the candidate is. I'm just going to vote that way, and that's it. And that's a terrible way to run a government.
That's true. That's true.
But anyways, with that, folks, we are running significantly over time for a normal stream like this, and so we're going to be getting on to the 3 last questions of the night and then rounding this thing on out. So we're on to the 3rd to last question of the night.
And this one goes to the Bonilla family, who said, just curious, are there any military bases or outposts in the DIAMID Islands on both Russia and USA?
Unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance on that because I don't know a lot about the Diomede Islands, but I do thank you for the question. And with that, we're on to the 2nd to last one of the night.
And this one goes to David Tablet, who said, is it possible that the Syrian government is hitting ISIS to prevent U.S. attacks and the U.S. is letting them do it?
It's possible, but generally we're going to have to watch this situation over probably about a week to really get a good understanding of exactly what the dynamic is between the SIG, us, and ISIS. But I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who put in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Jack Ragnarsson. And Jack said, did you hear today that Horseface demanded that Finland and Sweden's NATO membership be revoked? And he also extended that for all countries who have joined since 1997.
Oh, they've been pushing that for a long time. That's nothing new, actually. They've been saying that since the whole start of the Ukraine war. Well, and also after Sweden and Finland joined here very recently. But that has been going on for a while, and that should never be something that we even consider. NATO members are NATO members. If they don't like that, they can try and invade us and see how that goes, and it'll go poorly for them. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, folks, we have reached the end of tonight's stream, which is a very long one for a Sunday night fundraiser. We actually didn't have a 30-minute long question segment. We had an hour-long question segment. But I still got to say, it's really great to know that so many people hung out for that hour-long question segment, because we've had 111,000 people watch the stream before it ended, and we had 12.3 thousand people here at the peak. We're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of y'all continue to enjoy this channel and consider it to be your primary source of news. I hope y'all found the conversations that we're having here at the end to be very interesting and fruitful. Hopefully, I don't know if they were, but hopefully some of y'all will see it that way. But I do thank you all so much once again for watching, and if we have a short video to make tomorrow, Enforcer Matt will be the one making it, and if we don't, we will see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 48 hours of the news from around the world. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you all once again for another very successful fundraiser tonight. Over almost 4,300 raised, actually, which is well above the goal, doubling it almost. And a huge shout out to LSA for making that happen once again on another Sunday night stream. And we will see you all tomorrow on the short video if there is enough news to make for a video. And also, we will see you on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next Nightly War News stream. But in the meantime, folks, we'll see you all then. And you can also, by the way, since I was mentioning the Twitter earlier, you can peep the Twitter. I hadn't said that in a minute. If you want to go see the up-to-date real-time news throughout the Monday, because I'm posting on there every single hour of the day, even while I'm sleeping. Sometimes I just wake up and I have the urge to repost something. So I'm posting over there all the time. It's almost manic the way I post over there. But take advantage of it and go take a look at our Twitter page at It's the Enforcer on Twitter. But in the meantime, folks, thank you all for watching. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, get some rest, and good night.